I'm not even an agent, and I am psyched to be here. I am ready to rock and roll, and I hope that all of you are as well. I want to take a tiny second because it's a jam-packed day, but I do want to thank all of you for being here. We sort of went out on a limb to bring this here to the Valley. Thank you especially to those of you who traveled to be here. We are the friendliest association in the state. We love out of area. Look at me beaming. I love when you people show up. So thanks for being here. Education is pretty important here at RVAR. And it's very gratifying to me as the education director to see every single seat filled. So congratulations to all of you for taking your professional development so seriously. It floats my boat, so thanks. And I'm going to turn it over now to Kayla.
Hi everyone, I'm the education manager for OER. So we developed this curriculum. This is the second time it's been facilitated in Oregon, so lucky you. I just want to give a quick shout out to Brooke, Colin, and Devin they were on the original work group that decided what was going to go into this curriculum. So it's been a huge undertaking, and we wouldn't have this course without you three, so thank you. And then Carol Murray is here to instruct for you for today and tomorrow, and she is the curriculum writer she wrote this, the curriculum, so I'll let her introduce herself. But and then, of course, many of you know Jenny Kukula is here also, CEO of OER. She'll serve as our legal counsel for today. If any legal counsel is
answering emails, I'm not listening.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for being here.
Okay. Well, let's do this. First of all, how many of you had a chance to review some of the videos? Yes, you actually did it. I'm really happy. I'm almost verklempt. Okay. I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea of my background so you have an idea of whether I'm even worth taking time to spend for the next couple days. I have traveled nationally and internationally for over 19 years, training real estate licensees and brokers. I'm also a motivational humorist. I open and close conventions and been in Atlantic City and followed some big names, and I'm just kind of off the chain a little bit. So every once in a while I do stuff to amuse myself. It's just for me. And when I do that, and then I'll be able to roll on, and then we'll get back to the data and the content that we have. Now, what we do is I have, for the last, probably for 10 years, been consulting with brokerages, mostly working on the HR side of it, as well as the policies, procedures, and then taking a look at the way that they have set up and established their businesses. I specialize pretty much anyone with 300 licensees or less. Once we start getting into the mega, I'm smart enough to refer them off to someone else that are dealing with the much, much bigger, larger organizations, because your needs are different, yet they're the same. Now, what this curriculum came about is about raising the bar. Would that make sense? We are looking at, and I'm going to tell you quite frankly from my point of view, having written a lot of curriculum, bottom line is that I have been noticing the licensees that I'm working with are all walking lawsuits. It's a WL. Now, if any of you can relate to that, all of you should be very afraid. Be very afraid. Because each one of those people out there that have your name, your brand, is representing you, and it leaves you open to an exposure. So what I do when I instruct and work with you, I am going to teach the most conservative. You decide the amount of liability you want to take on. Would that be fair? So I'm going to teach to the most conservative, and you may ask questions, and I'm going to give you an answer, and then you go, yeah, but, and I'm going to go, you decide. Because I'm not an attorney. She's sitting over there. And what I am, I'm going to approach this from a broker's point of view. I am a licensed broker in Kansas City, Missouri. I do not and have not been in basically running a brokerage, but with the consulting, I've done a lot of shadowing and stay at the brokerages for a month or two and just figure out what's going on and working with them with their sales associates. So let's take a look at this content, because essentially what this group did was that they presented me with almost 75 different things they wanted you to learn. and to know. And it was my job to take those topics, which is what they gave me, put them together in an organized way in order to be able to present it, give you meat that you can work off of, and also do elements of collaboration. We know in real estate we are all doing the same type of business. So we work with each other, we have to cooperate, but we also compete at the same time. So the number one goal I have here, first of all, because I have brokers, is that we're going to make sure that we do nothing whatsoever to violate antitrust laws, rules, and guidelines. We actually have a section for this afternoon, or a little bit later on this afternoon, to talk about. The way the courses were designed is like a funnel. We start with all the general basic information, large, and as each day goes, we're going to move down and get more and more specific. Would that make sense? So it's kind of setting the stage, making sure that we're all on the same wavelength and we're all working at the same level. With that being said, I'm going to point out, first of all, in the handout for you, there's going to be a pretty extensive document here. It's about 70 pages long for just today. All the text and in detail will be in the handout. So I like to provide reference material for you. There's no need to be taking pictures of the PowerPoint because everything you need is right here in the handout. When we look at this, I thought, first of all, we would begin with risk management. And I'm going to begin to give you an idea, this course, trying to explain how I teach. You're going to notice two things. I was trying to warn them at the back table. I do what's called a sprint and drag. Sprint and drag is this. I might go in and say, okay, let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Here's what you do. Do this, do this, do this. Read it off on there. You got it. Good. Let's go. All right? Because it's in the handout. You know what you need. It's just technical data. And the drag will be when I need to slow down and start having the conversation. So you're going to see different speeds and levels. Anytime you want any further clarification on something or you don't understand what it is that I'm trying to get across here, please feel free to raise your hand, interrupt. I'll spot you. I'll stop on the dime. And if I know I'm going to be covering it later, I'll let you know. Is that okay? All right, cool. I also blank out the screen whenever I walk over to the other. Here's the reason why. When I stand in front of it, I look like Alfred Hitchcock. It's terribly unfortunate. And there's nothing worse than having me stand here and have the light blinding me. So I will always turn the light on and off if I want to get closer and feel personal, hello. And then I'll move back over here and we'll turn it off. But for most intents and purposes, I'll be speaking back from this side of the room so that you can get an easy view of the front. Now let's move on forward in what I think is an important thing to set the stage as well in terms of my way of teaching. What you're going to be seeing here is a video of two different styles. The first style shows a mother dog who is teaching her puppy how to be able to go down the stairs. And I believe she is the classic mentor. And that's how I perceive myself most often when I'm working with people. I try to demonstrate, try to give you some suggestions, which you will or will not take. Now, a good mentor will come back again. I may say it in a different way, maybe with a little bit more energy. And if I'm lucky, maybe you will do what I ask you to do. Odds are, just like our brokers, they're not going to do it. So you go back up again, and I will try 3 times to re-explain it. And then that's when I believe the magic happens. And you all know that sense of feeling when someone finally gets it, and they change their lives, and they change their careers. So mentor like a dog. Or you could be like a cat. That's me. So if I just say do it, trust me on that, okay? Because I'm going to be trying to bring in a lot of things from a national perspective. I'm going to do as much as I can and stay as informed in the Oregon way of doing it. And this is where Jenny and Kayla will make sure that I stay on track. And if something doesn't skew quite right with what you know, we'll make sure that there's clarification. And that's why they're there in the back of the room for you today. So with that being said, you will know when I'm being a dog or when I'm being a cat. You will know. So let's go ahead and just get started. First of all, what I think is important with a group that's as diverse as this, we don't have much room to be wandering around. So what I'd like you to do at your tables, if you would, please at least, if you don't and are sitting with new people, tomorrow, change it up. Sit somewhere else and meet someone new. It's really important to do that because the more you know, I was earning 20% of my income from referrals. Other companies within my market would send people to me because, again, they're going to guarantee to get a close or not get a close. Referrals are important, but it's also to build those relationships and understanding. Company name, how long you've been a broker, just share that at the table, number of brokers that you actually manage, and then I'd like you to get 2 areas you most like in terms of being a principal broker. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to do it, so go ahead and share. Thank you very much. That works really well. So whenever you hear me say that, if you can hear the sound of my voice, please go shh. It can quiet up to 3,000 people. It's really amazing how you do that because it just goes as a ripple. So thank you for doing that because I'm very big on staying on a timeline. We're going to make sure that we get you out on time and cover the material as needed. The other thing I did want to point out is that we have a video camera over here. The only reason why this is being videotaped is for future instructors because they have to figure out how to teach this. I'm a little off the chain, as I mentioned before, and I may do it a little bit differently than someone might, but it's about the content and the purpose of what we're doing behind each one of the elements. If anyone has any concerns about being on this video, it's only going to be going to instructors and not generated for general purpose for anybody else to review. So I just want you to be aware of that, and if you do have a concern, please make sure that you talk to Jenny or Kayla over there, okay? And we'll take it. He will not take off 10 pounds. I asked him, I said, there's got to be a filter to make me look smaller, but no, there isn't. So just in case. Here we go. Now, I thought maybe we'd get started with some things, and then we're going to dive right into the first element, which is going to have you do a quick quiz. And it's about risk management. And really, what we know, risk management begins in the environment within your offices. I'm really big about that. I can feel a culture of an office by sitting in the reception room. I know you've been in some areas where you get an idea if it's informal, if it's formal, if it's a free-for-all, if they're rude, if they're polite. I can tell by the way the receptionist answers the phone, just whether I smell cod burning in the microwave down the hallway. That's really bad, by the way, really bad smell. Thing is the environment sets the stage. So as they see you do, they follow. Let's make sure I hit that hard. They will do what you do. So anything that we do, if you're expecting your licensees or your brokers to act any differently than the way that you do your business, then we might have a problem. If you have a problem with what your brokers are doing and they're only doing what you do, then you may have a problem, okay? So we're going to start there with the environment. Next, risk management has to be a priority. And risk management means, especially for us, we are in the supervisory course. This is what this is about. It's taking our business, taking a look at business planning, the HR elements. I happen to be, my background is in human resources. I ran about 190 employees with an insurance field, a $75 million budget, facilities management. I'm very comfortable with the HR piece of it. What's fascinating is most principal brokers and brokers I've met have never had training in HR. Have no idea. I mean, you just run by the gut. I'm good at customer service. I do this, but you don't know when you just stepped into a major legal issue that could cause you 7 years of back wages because you treated someone like an employee when they actually were an independent contractor. So these are things that we are going to talk about. And in fact, we have an attorney, Kayla, who's the attorney coming in tomorrow to talk about the independent contractor element. Will? Okay, so Will is going to be in talking about that tomorrow, about the independent contractor aspect of it, and it's a huge, huge area to be aware of. Because right now you're aware that the push has been to make real estate licensees into employees. And in fact, the Swanepoel report in 2016, I wrote a couple pages for him in terms of the pros and cons of what you need to look for and not look for with that. When we look at the business decisions, obviously, again, the effectiveness. And the word here, let me point it out, coherent and logical policies. If you read something and you have no clue what you just put down, that's a problem, okay? So make sure that your policies and your procedures are fully in place. Each state, I've spoken in all 50 states, several different countries, and we take a look at the policies and procedures are different. Some require an agency procedure manual. Some say that you must have an office procedure manual. Some have no dictating of what it is. It's an opportunity. I know there's a template, which we'll share with you, that's already available from OAR, that you can download and then customize from there. But we're going to take a look at some of those elements later on, especially tomorrow afternoon. The ultimate goal, I have to be quite frank, is your culture. And I use the word an interactive culture. What is not working in today's world is, I'm the boss. Here I am. You got a problem with the way I run that business. There's the door. Doesn't work. And I've been seeing that happening in some brokerages, and they're wondering why they're having brokers that are just disappearing. But then we get the other end where we go, the broker or the licensee goes, I'm your top producer. I run this company. Your doors would close if it wasn't for me. Yes, I want to work with that person, especially if they have pearly white teeth, and then I might ask them who their dentist is. See, the thing is being interactive is you know what's going on with their life. So let me ask a quick question here. How many of you have 10 brokers or less in your company? All right. How many of you have 10 to 25? Okay, 25 to 75. 75 to 150. Okay, 150 to 300. Are you in there? That market? Anyone over 300? Okay, so when we look at it, you're going to have different things. I'm going to be asking you to do different things. Would you say, technically, it would be easier for me to connect if you were all my brokers here? Would it be easier for me to connect with you pretty much on a one-on-one basis? What do you think? Triple the size of this room. Triple it. Could I know you better? Could I remember who you were and who your spouse is and how many kids you have? Could I remember that? It gets harder. So it gets exponentially harder the more people that you are in direct management of. I'm going to give you a rule of thumb right now from the Society of Human Resource Management. It's called SHRM, SHRM.org. If you've never investigated or taken a look at human resources aspects, I would suggest that you check this website out. So it's SHRM.org. The number one reason why top employees and or independent contractors, they're both sides of the coin here, leave a company is because of their immediate direct report. They do not want you to make money off of them. If you keep that premise and think about your lives and the people that you've worked with and where you just decide, not anymore. I am out of here. I'm either going to start my own company, I'm not going to make you money, you're not worth it. You've got to figure out what kind of a culture you're going to create. And what it boils down to, especially with our millennials as you bring them in, is interactive. That you hear them, you know where they're coming from. You're not necessarily going to change everything because of the feedback that they have, but they know they have been heard. That's what's going to be vital. That's what my husband was like on the weekends when I came home. All right. Have you ever hired anybody and made promises and then they said you didn't deliver on their promises and they felt like they ran into a wall? This is setting culture. It's set within the first 90 days. If you don't have a killer orientation and onboarding process for your new brokers, the odds are you will lose them within 18 months. So your first 90 days are the most vital in terms of establishing relationships, communication, and processes. So when we look at that, we don't want them running into a pole. I can make any video work in these classes, by the way. I'm just going to let you know that. You're going to find some bizarre stuff. So let's take a look at a couple other things. Session objectives, I am not going to review them with you, but they're in the handout. There's over 27 different session objectives. So this is the legal aspect, and again, there's going to be a lot of sprint and drag in here and some feedback from you, but the session objectives are there for you to review. First place we're going to go is fair housing. This is one of my favorite courses to teach nationally, and I'm going to start you off with a quiz. There should be a quiz in your handout that is available for you. You're going to see up in the corner, it says this is day 1, page number 5, so that should correspond with the quiz, yep. And there are going to be approximately 14 questions if you wouldn't mind. Let's go through these, answer them to yourself. I'll give you about 5 minutes. I'll check back with you in 3, see where you're at, and then I'll give you the answers to the questions. How many felt this was pretty easy? Feel easy? Hopefully it will be. I'm going to give you the answers. These have all been validated by HUD, so no arguing. Just take it and run, and we're going to go. Let's do it. Testers may approach a housing provider without any intention of procuring housing. True or false? That is true. Okay, so it's not like entrapment. Doesn't work in fair housing. The owner of a single-family home is exempt from federal fair housing laws if the owner does not own or have an interest in more than 3 single-family homes at once. True or false? You think it's false? It's actually true. That is true. So they can have their own home and 2 more that they own under their own name, but they can't violate advertising in fair housing. But they can discriminate upon who provides them offers or who they show it to. Okay, big difference. In fact, I think it was something in Wisconsin that blew up a couple of years ago, and I don't know if any of you watched that go down, but it was about a for sale by owner that got into trouble. Next, an aggrieved party can file a complaint if they can prove they're a member of a protected class that financially qualified to obtain the property, were rejected by the defendant in the housing opportunity and remained open after rejection. True or false? That is true. Next one, discrimination needs to be intentional before a complaint can be filed. False. My biggest stroke happened when I went into Arizona. Broker had over 75 licensees. He picked me up at the airport and he says, I have the most incredible thing that's happened. I have spent just under $1 million in a brand new office complex. It's on a big acreage. It's wonderful. And see, we have about a 70% Hispanic market here, and I want to show you what we've done. So we drive up to this gorgeous complex, Frank Lloyd Wright. Think brass, wood, beveled glass. Oh, it was lovely. And we get out of the parking lot, and there's this main wonderful entryway and then a door off to the side. And I was starting to walk to the main entrance, and he goes, no, no, no. He goes, here's what I want to show you. And he takes me over to the door. And on the door it said, Hispanics, enter here. This is a true story. Hispanics, enter here. And he had out of his 7,000 square feet, 1,500 square feet that was in bright pinks and purples and royal blues, sombreros and hats. All of the Hispanic and licensees and customers, anyone speaking, had to work in this section of the building, and they would provide them specialized services. You walk through the door into the rest of it, it's like, oh, the burgundy carpet, the fawn trees. I mean, it was like Twilight Zone. And I'm hyperventilating as I'm seeing this. And I go, can any of the Hispanic people work in this part? And he goes, no, 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 it's better that they're here to work with their people. So I walked back out in the parking lot, and he saw that I looked pretty sick. And he goes, what's the problem? And see, I was there to teach a fair housing class that afternoon. That's why I was physically sick. And I said, there are just 3 words that come into mind. And he goes, what? And I go, separate but equal. And he looked, and he almost threw up in the parking lot. And he goes, I have basically segmented everything off. And I'm steering them only into one portion. I go, uh-huh. And he goes, do you know how much money? I said, I don't care. Because I said, your lawsuits could close this whole thing down. He changed it that day, stepped up in front of the group and said, mix them up and get everyone in the office. He never saw it. It was not intentional, people, because he was trying to do good for his community. but it could come across and it still violates fair housing. Discrimination, that's false. Next one, protected classes under fair housing laws. Which one? Did you get it? D? C? It's D. Those are the ones right off of HUD.
So I can't tell you what the difference between race and
I know.
I know they're separate categories.
They're separate categories, and I still have trouble as well between race and color and all, but these are what's listed specifically on the HUD site. Now, I will let you know, and that's for gender, but it does not go as far to add those other categories, right? So that is going to be local, more local, if they've had more specific. I know, they got a lot of them. Federal fair housing exemption categories include any of those? All the above. All my exams usually are all of the above. I don't believe in people getting test anxiety in my courses. So let's do this. A definition of a disability includes both physical and mental challenges. True or false? It is true. Disparate treatment is the intentional act of discrimination directed at those protected by law. That's false. Disparate treatment is an intentional act. Well, no, but it's a way that they can come back and sue you. There is disparate treatment, meaning that I go out and I've decided that I'm not going to serve a market of anyone with children. We only work with single people. And I'm intentionally making that my marketing campaign, and the way I do all my business is set up to treat them differently. That would be disparate treatment. It's going for a whole class of specific type of people, and it's intentional. Steering. Which one of those is steering? It's going to be C. Makes decisions for the buyers or renters on where they should live. We want them to always sit down and say, where would you like to find a home? And they'll probably turn around, and we know the buyers say, we want you to find us the best place. And then they'll say something like, where do all the doctors live? Where are all these people? Where can I find this? Or maybe certain religions. You say, well, here's what we'll do. I'll provide you a map. And if you want to drive around, but you tell me. I am not going to steer or direct you. Where do people with kids live? You can't tell them that. You're going to hate me. If you were in my fair housing class, you'd be really yelling at me a lot. And I'm going to tell you, I teach the most conservative, because you wouldn't believe how conservative we were in our company in the Kansas City market, because we had HUD watching us like a hawk on anything that we did. So a real estate broker is making decisions you cannot. You ask them where they want to go, and then you try to help them within that area. Title 10, which one of these prohibits property owners from refusing to make reasonable modifications? Yep, grab bars. So how would you feel when we had someone that came in with all the instructors? This is about 6 or 7 years ago. She was a little person. She was this tall. She came to teach. We put her up on a stool and she talked to all of us. And she was really mad at every single instructor and real estate licensee within that marketplace because she felt she was discriminated against. And here's why. She went in to go to rent a place. She goes to your place and says, here, you must lower every counter in this property to fit me. It can't be at the 4-foot level. It's got to be down at the 2-foot level. And you have to be able to lower the bathroom. And you got to pay for that. Is that true?
You don't have to pay for it, no.
No.
Yeah, well, it depends on if you're getting federal funding and all that, blah, blah.
But bottom line is, technically, she was incorrect because she felt that she needed to be accommodated against because she was a little person. Now, what she can do is pay for it, if you want, and then she also has to escrow to return it back to its original condition, right? That is the natural or the national outlook of how they look at that. So again, it's a matter of degree. And she was really angry with us, and then we brought an attorney in, and he corrected her very quickly and said, no, it's an accommodation if the person wants to do that for you, but it is not a requirement. Next one, 11. Disclosing information about a property neighborhood population which is part of any protected class is a discriminatory housing practice prohibited by law. True or false? Or you think I'm trying to catch you? It's true. So here's where you're going to hate me. You're with a couple, has children. You're showing them in a neighborhood. And a little kid drives by on Hot Wheels. And they ask you if there's kids in the neighborhood. You say, I can't tell you that. You think I'm kidding? I can't tell them that. They say, I want to go live where there's a lot of families. You do your research, you come back and tell me. and then I'll be happy to show you homes in that neighborhood. Most conservative people. So we want to be careful about what we're doing and identifying what we're doing. Where do your kids go to school? I'm sorry, I can't tell you that. If I tell them where my kids go to school, could I not be indicating a preference? And therefore, there might be possible steering. I'm going to just go to the most absurd. What I'm saying is I've heard all of this everywhere across the country, that if they can get you into a lawsuit, they will. Wall Street Journal came out about 7 years ago. I was in Oklahoma, and they brought me the paper and about threw up when I read it. Excuse me, I have a tendency to throw up when I read things that are absurd. And on there, they surveyed their readership. The one question they had on the Wall Street Journal was, how do you plan on funding your retirement? The number one answer was sue someone. Number two answer was to win the lottery. And it was number 5 to work and save for it. I don't even know what 3 and 4 were. I was so upset by number 1 and number 2. So why not, if you know you're the one with the money and you're driving around with all those big vehicles and they know you're selling millions of stuff and you get millions of dollars, right? You don't have any expenses. They will go to your purse. So if I'm sounding a little cynical, it's because I've heard so much in the last 19 years. I'm glad I'm out now. Next, 12. 1 year is allowed to file an alleged discriminatory practice complaint. True or false? It's true. 1 year to file a complaint. So here's my question, and you should ask your brokers, what were you doing a year ago? Who were you talking to? What were you saying to them? What have you documented? Because they could file today for something that happened a year ago, be within the complaint time, and you can't go back and start gussying up your records to get a more convenient memory as to what actually happened with this client. Everything's discoverable. So I want you to be really careful that you should be documenting as you go. Your practices should be consistent. And if it doesn't raise hives, that if I don't know what you're all doing out there as my licensees, and if I can't feel confident in what's coming out of their mouth, then we might want to have more significant training. Just a thought. Number 13, fair housing regulations prohibit the use of no children in advertising. True or false? Yeah, that is true on the nature. First of all, just taking a look without the over 55 exemption. Number 14, which of the following is true? Which one did you pick? Should be D. You can't state an explicit preference or limitation or discrimination based upon familial status. This ad, Des Moines Register a year ago, real estate licensee. I laughed so hard, practically spit my coffee out. Perfect bachelor pad, wonderful for hooking up.
We'll call it the tender pad.
The Tinder. Oh, yes. So, and you think, how did that get by the broker? How on earth? It was in the newspaper. Perfect bachelor pad, wonderful for hooking up. Wow. I find I'm speechless. What's that?
They were talking about knitting with hooking up.
Oh, that could be.
Yeah.
If it was knitting, and he had a big knitting needle on there. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have you dive deep within your groups. Whenever you see this, and I'll keep the light on for right now, and then I'm going to turn it back off when we get started. On page 7, so on the upper right-hand corner, case study number 1. Now I'm going to tell you these are all true stories. The brokers have either shared this with me, they either happened to me or to someone else that I knew, and I've tried to recreate them for you as accurately as I can. I will also hopefully be able to tell you the rest of the story. What I want is feedback from you. Now, I'm not necessarily going to get feedback from every single table. I will probably just start over here, so I'll just give you fair warning. And then as each case study comes up, we'll move around the room. Are you okay with that? All right. So be aware, be ready. Case study number 1, page 7. Please read it. I will be back in 5. All right, I'm hearing. If you can hear my voice, let's go shh. Whenever I hear a drop in the conversation, I'm just going to leap in, whether it's 5 minutes or not. So I'll just give you a heads up on that. So as I promised here with the first group, we have Matt, we have your broker acting weirdly, and he's really upset and embarrassed. What do you think could be the reasons? Before I start with you, what would be reasons why her behavior would change?
An ex-boyfriend.
Okay, ex-boyfriend.
He could have not been looking at her face.
He could not. He could have been just like zeroed in on her feet. You know, it could have. Foot fetish, very upsetting. So that could be possible. What else?
He could have looked her what?
He could have what?
There could have been evidence of drugs. Maybe he smelled like alcohol.
All right, so there could have been evidence of drugs. So could there be something going on where her behavior would change? So we have one thing. Do we recognize that when you get the phone call, what's your first step?
Apologize to Matt.
I apologize to Matt. So your first step, what? Make him feel heard. Got that? What else? Thank you. What else? Next step.
Talk to Sarah.
Talk to Sarah. So that means you gather what? Information, because you know nothing right now. So tell me, what did you decide? What did you come up with your group? Who's your spokesperson? And speak loudly for the group.
We had to talk to Sarah and find out what the deal is. If
Okay.
Sarah really is reacting negatively to him because of his national origin, then we're going to have to let it go.
Okay.
If it's something else, then I think we need to figure out what it is, and could it be a situation where she calls him up and says, you know what, I'm so sorry, my manager told me that I behaved this way, I just want to let you know the reason why was because I had to fight with my kid that morning, or whatever it is.
Okay.
If it could be patched up that way, that would be good.
All
But
right.
if it can't be patched up that way, because she's too angry, then I think at that point, all you can do is offer to have him work with somebody else. Not because she doesn't want to work with them,
Right.
but because he doesn't want to work with them.
Because it's about his comfort. So we have to, whether it had the appearance of intentional or not, we still have to approach this very methodically and carefully, because could he not file a complaint? And the only answer is yes. And that's what he was prepared to do, is file a fair housing complaint. How do you feel about the steps you said? Anyone have any other thoughts that came up at your table? Yes?
Well, I just think you have to determine whether this is going to be a pattern in Sarah.
Ah,
You know, if she does have that in her nature to discriminate against sex.
so pattern of behavior is something that we're going to have to determine. Would it make you maybe go back and look at other clients possibly? Or take a look at what's closed, and maybe if you see a trend in that, and then it's only certain, could that be possible?
But she's new, so.
So she's
You want to be
new.
careful you're not discriminating against her.
Yes.
And just being maybe aware, but giving her the benefit of the doubt going forward, this could be an isolated incident.
So how many of you would, and thank you for that, how many of you would be in favor of giving her the benefit of the doubt first?
Well,
Good.
after you took care of the client.
After you took care of the client. They've been heard. Thank you very much. How can we resolve this for you? Because I will be stepping forward, having conversations.
And it's also an education opportunity, not only for the new agent, but for the rest of the office.
There you go.
They, you know, now this is an opportunity to bring it up and share, and, you know, as an example, you don't have to do the exact guy and embarrass her, but, you know.
Okay? So it's an education opportunity for everyone, not necessarily identifying the client or the agent, but this is something that we needed to handle. Odds are everybody in the office already knows about it, but you know, you want to make sure that you're careful about how you do that and not put someone on the spot. Yes?
I think I'm only suspicious because we recently had a gentleman touring our area who was suing restaurants for not handicapped accessible, in his opinion. And so I think that it's important when you have Matt on the phone that you can find out as much information as possible.
Yep.
Be sure that you know, to the best of your ability, what type of a person you're dealing with.
Yep. Okay?
And it's terrible to be suspicious, but I think we have to be honest.
All right, so be cautious and conservative and do your research. Makes sense.
You just told us that some people's retirement plan is suing.
That. Yes, exactly.
It's purposeful. Yes.
What she said, I find that true for anybody who's calling and complaining. I need to not defend. I need to take time and let them run their course. Sometimes just being heard is all they need. Sometimes listening to what their complaint is and being able to show that later on this is not what they said this time.
Yeah.
Their story has expanded. That's helpful to know too. So
We're going to
hard
vet it.
Avoid being defensive, but we have to. We just have to say.
And that's a good phrase when you say about avoid being defensive, because the first thing is we're going to want to protect our own, or protect our chicks, and to do that, because you're an outsider, and here's our chicks, and I know Sarah's the sweetest little thing, and why would she do that? Okay, so as we look at the results of this, she had seen him brutally attack somebody. She had witnessed it, brutally attack somebody. So when she met him, recognized him, it freaked her out. She did what she needed to do for the day, but she kept that wall up there, the fence. I'm going to show you the house, whatever you need, whatever. But she had seen a physical attack. So what do you do with that? First thing she should have done is what when he walked in the door? Huh? She should have done what? See the broker and say, I cannot work with this person, and here's why.
But the broker should have already interjected, because then this is as the broker saw it.
Yes.
I mean, as soon as he saw her demeanor change,
Yes.
he should have taken proactive.
Would you agree? So as soon as you see this behavior, and you know when someone shuts down, when they're not acting right, you know that if you know your people at all. Should it be the broker's responsibility and say, you know what? How about if I step in, let's chat and maybe sit with them and then pull her aside for a moment and say, what's going on here? And then bring in someone else we found out that you might have different needs that maybe Sarah can help you with today. And so we're going to substitute in this licensee. Could that be possible? Or do you want to send them out with someone that's beat up someone else? Now, am I getting into ethics? See, here's how reality in these case studies, let me get really clear. They're not clear. We live in the gray, do we not? That's all we live in. Nothing is clear one way or the other, and each little nuance could change and flip everything on its ear once we know about something. So as we take a look at these case studies, all we can do is create a pattern and a process and hope that it can get down to the truth. Are there any Rotarians here? Is it the truth? Does it hurt others? And there's one more. There's like three.
Beneficial to all concerned.
Is it what? Beneficial to all concerned in terms of the decision you make. That's a Rotarian model. So it's the truth. What's the truth? What is really happening here? Once we focus on that and then we move forward, I think you'll find more benefit. And then document like mad, people. Document. Can't tell you enough. Let's do number 2. What would you do? Do I have to rent to? So I'm going to go to the group in the back by the thermostat. We've now trying to cool the room down, if you haven't noticed it. It got up to 75 degrees. We're going to slowly roast and be available for lunch. So page 7, item number 2, please read. I'll be back in 5. All right, if you can hear my voice, please go shh. Thank you very much. This is a hard one. How many of you do property management? Any of you have that with it? Some? Okay. I know it's not any at your table back there do property management at all. So you feel like you're in the deep end? Okay. Anybody here do you want to skip on this one and go to the next one and let someone else grab it that has property management experience, or do you want to jump in?
Well, we have one question. Can you even ask about her ability? I mean, can you ask that?
It wasn't asked, it was offered because he was so excited. This was a broker that was in Chicago that called me and asked this. This is a scenario we shared and talked about at great length. Yes?
So from my perspective, I don't think you can withdraw his application because you're talking about a future event that may or may not happen.
Yeah.
Right?
And at the time that it does happen, if it does, wouldn't you just go through the same application process with her?
Like expanding, adding an addition. People get married all the time when they're living and renting places, right? So are you going to all of them and saying, are you mentally able to live here? Are you doing that? No.
The key word that gets me is can't be left on her own for any length of time for safety reasons. I don't care
That's
that he's
correct.
married or not. But the other tenant, so what if she likes to light fires? And she'll do that if she's not unaccompanied.
That could be possible. So he says, possible she could light fires, or this leaves the stove on, or the doors are always open, or, but we don't know, right?
Why are we assuming she is going to be left alone? I mean, they know how to care for themselves. Why do we not think that they're going to have a caretaker who's going to come in?
We don't know that. That's our gray, is it not? This is about the legality of what we can and cannot do under fair housing. Okay, we're going to go back here.
Question that we had is, once you get that application, of course it says for safety reasons. So what are you allowed to ask and not allowed to ask? Is she going to have a caregiver? What kind of safety reasons is it? Can we even accommodate for some of those or not? Because at that point in time, then you'd have more information, but we just don't know. Can you ask those questions?
Okay, who's my property management people? Can you answer that question? Because I've never done property management and I don't want to answer it. But I'm going to tell you what I recommended. So property management, go for it here, and I'll be right back.
We did property management in my company that I just sold. My husband handled that area. I did not do it because he was much better, but he had 2 rules. One, can you cause the rent to be paid? And number 2, can you cause the property to be properly maintained? So if the disability and they have a caregiver and everything's going to be okay, he had to have people prove that they could cause the property to be properly maintained.
Right, but can you ask the question, are you going to have a caregiver? Or are you overstepping a bound?
All right, so it's an excellent question. I'm going to address that in a minute. Yes?
My first license was property manager, and I still do a lot of property management. No, you can't even ask the question.
Yes.
Right.
Can't ask.
Cannot even ask the question. I'm sorry, we have to assume that these are adults who know how to handle their own life, and if they can't handle their own life, there is somebody there to help them handle it and manage it in the way they can. It is not our job to be their babysitter or their caseworker, or heaven forbid, their judge on what they can and cannot do. So they get to make those determinations. Now, if there is court cases that show that they lived the last 3 places they lived on fire, that's a different story.
Because it's a pattern of behavior, and you're there to protect the premises.
This is, in the first place, both people are covered under disability statutes. Yes. And so it's a fair housing issue, and even if we didn't have the future thing in there, it's fair housing. You can't deny somebody for those purposes.
Well, the only question I asked when it came on the phone, I said, first of all, have you called your attorney? That's always, you got to fall in love with your attorneys. I love you. Take them to lunch once in a while. Just do that. Send them a flower, like a single little, not a yellow rose, because that's unfaithful. Red rose is, did you know that? My husband only gave me yellow roses for like a full year before he realized it's all about infidelity. But that's okay. Love your attorney, get him on the phone and say what would be an appropriate response. But number 2, I agree with what I said. You cannot ask the question. Number 3, if I was married, my husband and I moved in, well, I am married for a long time, but we get married, could I get dementia? I mean, people might argue I have it now, but the thing is, and then I may not be capable. We're not going in there and rejudging a medical problem now that's surfaced and they've been renting for a long time. So you were correct in saying future. We can't, and he was joyful talking about it. It may or may not happen. You judge on what's here, right now, based upon those qualifying criteria, can't ask the question. It was a very hard thing for this guy to do because he felt nervous about the other people in his units. Said you can't, just can't.
I have a question. I'm not a property manager. Is there a time limit as to when you have to respond to an application?
Oregon? Changes by state, so some say it's within 24 hours, 48 hours. Do you have a time limit?
Is there a time limit as to when you have to respond to an application for a rental?
The issue would come, if there's not a time limit, the issue would come as if you held that application hoping that something better came along after it. That in itself could be looked at as a discriminatory.
And we're actually going to get into that next. So cool. No, perfect. And that's exactly right. So it leads me to case study number 3. Let's do this one. What would you do? Do I have to rent too? So case study number 3. Again, only going to give you about 3 minutes on it. No, let's see here. This is the round file. Sorry, case number 3 is the round file. True story, student in my classroom shared this, and it happened to her in the class. All right, we're going to go ahead and stop. Let's go ahead and stop right now. I'm going to have group number 2. I'm going to move forward to this. So just talk to us about your general thoughts and concerns on this situation. Do you think they did anything wrong? Are there any issues? All right, I'm just asking. So what are your thoughts? What kind of discussions were you having at the table?
Well, you can't throw a file away, number one. Somebody turns a file, and every file has to be reviewed, just like an offer comes in. You have a responsibility to present your offer. So, I guess it should have been, it was taken, it should have been reviewed, regardless of what that is compared with your other offers.
Okay.
And some policies, some owners, property owners, tenants might have certain things about offering housing to people that are felons.
Okay.
We may have an issue here too with the broker even being licensed to do property management.
Okay.
If he's not.
Because I know there's separate requirements here in Oregon, yep. Okay.
No, a broker could practice under the supervision of
Under the supervision, this person did not. This was under another state, it wasn't Oregon, so they were operating, they were just a regular broker in the office doing this for a friend. So however that would apply for you here, yes?
For his case, you should take the ethnicity checkboxes off your app. Because it didn't say they met person, I don't think. He's claiming that the reason he discriminated was black, you can't tell it from the application unless you have an ethnicity box on your application.
Okay.
So Oregon has a denial letter that
Yep.
you are supposed to use, so we shouldn't have ever ignored it. We should have denied it based on
You should inform him. Why?
why. And now, HUD suggests that we not discriminate based on criminal record because of the disparate impact to certain minorities. However, the state of Oregon allows us to discriminate based on felony convictions that are property, violence, sexual, or drug related.
And federal also does drug. You can discriminate against a manufacturer of drugs and a distribution of drugs. That's also one end of the federal.
So the problem is it should have officially declined.
Based upon past federal or his past behavior, that I can decline it. But because they failed to respond, could he have had the unintentional impact that they thought they were discriminating based upon race? Is that possible? That's the only thing that we have here. So where mistake was not telling him why. Would you agree? This gal goes into court. She got yanked into court. Sued to the nines. The judge says in front, says, why did you not just tell him because he was a felon, because he was pushing and doing the drugs? And she goes, well, I didn't have to, and I got to protect my friend. And he goes, $10,000. She goes, you don't know what you're talking about. We got to do what's right for our friends. He goes, $20,000. She goes, you know what? I think that I would do it again. The round file is where that needs to go because he's pushing drugs. He goes, $30,000, sweetheart. Keep talking. She went up to $40,000 penalty because she felt so big about the fact that she should have the right to decide without informing people the reasons why she does or does not pursue with the application. And she did this in front of a classroom. Do you know how many people didn't talk to her the rest of the day? They just kind of went, who is she? I'll go here, there, and then we'll move on.
Question on this on a rental application. If you know that they're lying.
If you know that they're lying.
Yes, because for example, if you have a question on there about smoking.
Yep.
They reek a cigarette smoke, they sit out in front of your house, in your front of your office, and smoke in your car, and they say no, they're not smokers.
Do you have an attorney on file? Smokers are not necessarily smoking, could be or non-smoking. You don't go after the person, you go after the behavior in fair housing. So smoking is not allowed. Is it possible you could be a smoker but never smoke in the apartment?
Yes.
Did I just step on that? That's what I'm telling you. So behavior versus the person. Important. Yeah.
So the thing about a felon, we're trying to remember just recently, the past 2 days, a city and or state passed or proposed a law regarding not renting to felons and doing away with background checks. So this is a...
It's coming to the surface because it's under discussion because there is a disparate impact on certain minorities that have higher criminal records than others. So it could be discriminatory by running a background check. That's the conversation that's being held right now. Keep your eye on it because it's going to change everything in terms of the property management field. It'll change a lot. Thank you, everyone, for that. Next one, case study number 4. What would you do? You would be more comfortable here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and step in. So what we're going to do is we've got Wes, was actually a friend of mine, lives in San Francisco, and this is what happened to a friend of mine in San Francisco. So with this being said, I'm going to go to group number 4 over here, and I'd like you to know, first of all, how would you monitor how your brokers, we obviously know this is steering, right? Okay, so how are you going to monitor the language and what your brokers are doing out there when they're showing homes, and what actions would you do to make sure they're in compliance? That's the question on this scenario.
Well, we start by having a agent office policy that just talks about fair housing. That's step number 1.
Okay, policy.
So in education, we have at least a fair housing class provided either not make, you can't make agents do anything. Suggest to either go to one provided by the organization, our local organization, or provide some training in the class.
And she was saying get them prepared and send them out to fair housing training, offer that opportunity to stay on top of that. Anything else you could do?
Provide them regularly with a list of fair housing words.
Okay.
List that says.
List of fair housing words, the watch words, absolutely.
Yes. Other than that, I don't know. I'm going to call in the rest of my group here.
Well, something that Devin and I have done, we do new agent reorientation, and
with the association.
With the association, and we've had a lot of fun role playing with each other, what it looks like, steering looks like to the group of agents.
Okay.
And that's really, I mean, it really hits home, and even though they're really farce examples, this would be a prime example of something that Deb and I would probably role play in front of the agents.
Yeah, okay, so role playing could be a good opportunity for this. When we look at taking a look, how many of you have called past clients? Called past clients. How was the home search conducted? Ever done that? That was my practice. My practice was to do that. They would never know, but it would be a random sampling, and it was my normal follow-up. Every single customer and client got called by me. I had 27 agents in my office, and every single closing, 2 weeks later, I would call, and I had a set of 5 or 6 questions. And the first most important one was, tell me how the home search was conducted. I learned more on what they did and the process they went through, and then I knew what I had to do to educate them. So basically, it's all about, and I inform the client, I'm looking to make sure that we have the best possible customer service that would happen for you. But that was always one of my most important questions to ask. How was the home search conducted for you? Okay, and it answers a lot of questions. So with that, any other feedback on this one? Now I'm going to probably skip the next one. It's very similar. Number 6, and this is something I'd like you to think about. It's your complaint handling. Just to review it quickly, you are the principal broker over 68-year-old Lonnie Lindell, a Vietnam vet. He's been with your company for 7 years. Over the past 12 months, you've had to handle 2 complaints from Asian customers about Lonnie's attitude when working with them. Both claimed Lonnie made crude remarks relating to their cultural needs when it came to housing, such as needing to follow those feng shui rules. You now have received notice that another of Lonnie's clients, Mr. Lee, Asian, has formally filed a complaint with HUD, stating that Lonnie is steering them only to Asian neighborhoods and not showing them other properties and they are qualified to see. So again, this is about in-house. How are you going to handle this? Could he have a bias? Is that possible? We don't know. You don't make the assumption that there's a bias, but we have to get information. What's the truth? What do we need to do? Do your education. So it's along the same lines, but now it's what is your procedure? What is it that you're going to do, and how are you going to consistently apply it from one broker to another, to another, to another? Because it's your pattern of behavior that will save you or bring you down in a court of law. Pattern of behavior is something to be aware of, a term that you should be aware of. Pattern of behavior. So what I'd like to do is show you this. Let me back up a minute because I want to turn the light out because it's hard to see. I will let you know that if you've ever done a search on YouTube and bring up fair housing videos and look at the number of hits, the public probably knows more about fair housing than what our brokers do and our licensees do. It's frightening. So I'm going to tell you this is one of the ones that has some of the most hits, and I think that one of the most impactful fair housing videos.
Let's play a game. Let's pretend for a moment. You own an apartment building, and I want to rent from you. I have a steady job, I make a good salary, and have a good credit history. Would you rent your place to me? How about now? Do you still like me, or have your opinions changed? What if I have an accent? Or a last name that sounds foreign? What if I have a disability? What if I'm a single parent? Would you steer me away? Would you close the door? Would you?
The Fair Housing Act protects your right to live where you want, no matter what your race, color, national origin, sex, religion, disability, or family status. If you think you've been discriminated against, call us. Fair housing, it's not an option, it's the law.
Okay? So when we look at these different things, and just so I can give you a heads up here, some of you are almost floating right now. We're going to go for about 20 more minutes, and then we're going to take our first break. We'll give you a 15-minute break, and then lunch will be at 12:30. I want to make sure that I finish this section before we head out. So let me give you a few things in terms of advertising restrictions. This is where the sprint comes in. First of all, you have to adhere to your multiple listing guidelines, correct? That makes sense. So make sure that you know what the rules and guidelines. You cannot make any preferences, limitations, or discriminations based upon any protected class. As we do these restrictions and take a look at our digital marketing, our paper marketing, social media, you've got to be watching all of this. You have to monitor the brokerage, individual brokers' websites and social media. Are you doing that? And how are you doing that? Have you made them aware that you will be going in and taking a look at stuff? Why not? You should be friended by all of them on LinkedIn, whatever, Instagram, whatever they're doing out there, you should be paying attention to how they're doing their marketing. Fair Housing logo, encourage that to be on everything, their business cards, their flyers, their website, every single page of the website, even on all their own individual ads. The more that logo shows up, the more favorably you will be viewed by HUD. Your Fair Housing poster needs to be prominently displayed within your brokerages. Prominently displayed, not hidden away in a bathroom that nobody ever uses, somewhere and posted. It needs to be there. It may not be as pretty as we might like to have it, but have it prominently displayed. I'm also going to suggest to you a pattern of behavior. I've recommended this for licensees for years, did it with my licensees. We never even came close to having any issues because we created a process about informing and adhering to the law. So I provided for you some steps to consider to talk with your brokers. First of all, when we do it, it's an opportunity to outline your behaviors and how your communication and how the search is to proceed. That is our interview. So whether it's the seller or the buyer, doesn't make any difference. A prime opportunity to set the stage. As we walk through it, first thing you need to do is talk to that client. So I'm in front of my listing here, and Victoria? Hi there. So Victoria, I'm going to say, don't speak. I'm going to walk through some fundamental things here, and I'm going to prepare the stage, and then we'll move into the listing conversation. And I'm going to tell them about fair housing, what I can and I cannot do. Cannot, because of the law, mom. I always blame it on mom. You want to ask about that? Can't. Mom says I can't. It's that simple. So the law says I can't tell you whether they have kids or not. I can't do this. They want to send you a love letter. Victoria, we're going to talk about not letting it come through because it may have you discriminate. They may tell you things that fall under fair housing, and that if they don't get the deal, they might want to come back and sue you saying you discriminated on them because you found out they had 3 kids and you don't like kids. Could that be possible? So the love letters, we're going to have those conversations. Number 2, step 2, agency options. We're going to get into agency today. And explain, disclose limited dual agency. When does it start? How does it work? So you want to explain agency. 3, confidentiality. When does it begin? So Victoria, company policy says the moment I sat down here, confidentiality began. Whether you hire me or not, it goes to my grave. Okay? Or it could be company policy says, unless you hire me, if you don't hire me, I'm going to tell everybody. So keep your mouth shut. I'm going to let them know. I'm going to warn them. So it's going to give them the basis of where confidentiality begins according to the law or according to company policy if it's more strict. Would that make sense? Because you might have more latitude in the law in many states than you might in your company policy. Next, we're going to go over antitrust. And I bet many of your agents aren't doing most of these. You go in and say, you may want to ask about Jane Doe over here. I can't have that conversation with you. Well, this company does. I'm sorry. Victoria can't have that conversation. All I can do is concentrate on the services my company offers. And, you know, my mom always said, if you can't say something wonderful and raving about someone, you don't say anything at all. So the best rule is, let's just concentrate on what I can do for you. And then I'll let you make your decision. Because they will ask you to compare. Well, how is she different? And what does he do different from me? And why? And he has all this and that. I'm sorry. Here's what I will do for you. Because antitrust prohibits me from doing any boycott language, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't take that long. Everything I've just shown you here is less than 8 minutes when I give it to a client, front and back, unless we have questions, and then we slow it down and we walk through it. But it's a pattern of behavior that I do. Step 5, then we start gathering information. Now we speak. And now we start doing the open-end questions. The rule of thumb is 80% Victoria talking, 20% me talking. That's HR 101, people. The more they talk, the more you learn. You don't learn when it's all coming from here. So again, I'm going to ask open-ended questions and move forward. Step 6, you should always be reviewing how the MLS works. What does it look like? We have such possibilities now with smart TVs. I can hook it up with an HDMI cord or maybe even Bluetooth, and I can walk them through and say, here's how we would search for your home. Here's how someone would find a home. Do you do any of that? People love that. They don't need to gather around your laptop anymore. You can even use, there's certain softwares where even if they have an iPad, you can go to join.me. How many of you are familiar with join.me? So they can get on their iPad and you'd be on your laptop and they can see everything that's on your laptop on their iPad sitting around the table. So we have technology that will keep them informed and we will show them how it works. So if I don't plug this in, here's how you'll get screened out. If we do a price range of, say, $250 to $299, but if I put $300, you're never going to show up in that search. You just want them to give a cause and effect. Explore other websites. Go to Zillow, go to Realtor.com. Where does the average buyer go? Educate, educate. As we walk through many of these things in the interview, you will end up quickly about establishing trust. That's what our goal is. We are going to inform. We are the trusted advisor. We're setting around the ground rules so that we avoid problems later. My number one rule of thumb, slow down up front, and you can speed up at the end. Just slow. Look how much I've been doing a sprint for the last 12 minutes. I timed it. A sprint. Look how nice it feels when you can breathe. Methodical, informational, so that if you're ever called into a court of law and they said, you know what, she never reviewed the property condition report and what that meant to me on there, all I'd have to do is bring in my last 10 clients and go, did she review it? Oh yeah, she did. Yep. Why on earth would I do it different for you? It doesn't make any sense why I would do something different. So I'm going to do a quick blitz, and when we're done with this blitz, we'll take our break. So here we go. It's a shout out. Just raise your hand, and I want you to give me an answer and how you would respond to this question from a buyer or seller. So here we go. They're listed in your handout. Real quick, on page 12, an Asian couple, one accountant, the other a teacher, had made an offer on your listing. Your seller asks, what color are they? What do you say? They're pink? Let's try another one. What's another response?
I don't know.
Nope. Give me an even better one. Another response.
I cannot discuss that with you because it cannot be part of our discussion.
Because mom says I can't. By law, I cannot respond to that question. Next. Right? It's that simple. By law, I can't respond to that question, fair housing laws, and move on. So don't be trying to do anything else that isn't specific because you probably do know. And why would you lie? Don't ever set yourself up for that because then you end up with trouble. Let's look at Mr. Adams. Prospective buyer is of Indian descent. A house has been shown 4 times, 2 months. No one seems interested. Your seller asks, I don't want these people to get the house. If I take my home off the market, how long do I have to wait before I sell it again? How would you answer that to the seller?
If I take my home off the market, how long do I have to wait to sell it again? I can't answer that question because you'll be having to deal with a different realtor.
Okay, she says, I can't answer that because what are they trying to do?
They're trying to
Discriminate by making it unavailable when it actually really is available, and then it's made available again, maybe in a certain period of time. So you could get sucked into.
I tell them that
So
they're doing something illegal, and it's in their best interest not to do that.
it's an illegal act under fair housing for us to do this for you to try and avoid because you don't want to sell them to this.
Follow-up question. Could the realtor file a claim against the seller?
I don't know. Because we want to, don't we? That's the question. He goes, can't we sue the seller? You jerk. No. File a claim. Can't, you bigot. I'm going to file a claim against you because I know personally the stuff that you do. And
Not a claim, but a fair housing. Alert fair housing.
When we talk about representation, wouldn't that be kind of like your attorney turning around and deciding to go to court and jail him up because he's guilty?
Going to murder someday. They're supposed to tell somebody to do.
Yeah. Oregon has that law.
And you have a ready, willing, and able buyer, but you've earned your commission.
That's true.
Oh, there's that too.
Yeah. Unless your contract says that you must close, Does yours? Your listing agreement, does it say you must close in order to have been deemed to earn the commission? It's important to know that. If you don't know that, you better go read it again.
We have a protection clause, but if you have to be able to prove that they have shown all kinds of things, it would be pretty tough to go after the average seller, and you create all kinds of bad will, going forward.
Well, and that's where we start getting into, like I said, the gray. There's parts on the contract and part of what we do as a business decision, what's there. But if selling...
In response to this, wouldn't you say, well, let's go back and look at our contract with regard to, what it takes for termination of the contract, what those different things are, rather than, you're addressing this, but you're going back to the contract. Mr. Seller, you have X and so. If you terminate, these are the things that you have to do in order to terminate, and the cost that you might incur in order.
All right, so what she's basically is, and let me just re-clarify that so that we're all on the same page, that couldn't I go back to the contract? I want to terminate it and I want to pull it off the market. Well, you know the reason why. Here's where the problem is. You know why they're doing it. The intent is where it comes into a problem. It wasn't just a generic question that came out of nowhere. You know they don't want these people in there. And they're trying to use, and then they're going to use the contract as a tool in order to be able to get out of it. It could create more difficulty. But she's going back to would that be pragmatic? Let's go back to the letter of the law. Here's a letter of the document, what you can and can't do. What would you like to do? Here's the cause and effect. I would suggest that you contact your attorney. Is a great phrase. Contact your attorney. Whenever you can put a legal entity in between you and the client, I love them. And I send them flowers and I take them to lunch and dinner. That's what I do. So bottom line is, get them out there and getting the answers. But no, I don't think we can sue the client because we're for information. All we can do is terminate our agreement with them. And then I'll go back over here. Let me get this.
So going back to the original fair housing quiz that we started the piece with, number 2 said that the owner of a single-family home is exempt from the federal fair housing laws if the owner does not have any interest in 3 or more single families. So the relationship with the realtor is what triggers
That's
fair
correct.
housing. So if they're for sale by owner, they can terminate all they want.
That's right. So again, reiterating, he said for sale by owner, they're on their own, but the moment they sign up with a realtor, they're subject to everything under fair housing rules and guidelines.
Maybe you just wash your hands of it and tell them to go for sale by owner.
You can back away from that point and terminate, but again, all you have to do is it doesn't have to be it just has the appearance of. And so the Indian couple will still bring you into a lawsuit. I'm just telling you, you'll get sucked into it. Even whether you had an intent to, well, I got out of it. I said I wasn't going to represent them anymore, but they still took the house off the market. You didn't advocate and protect me under fair housing rules and guidelines. You understand how this wraps?
We can't force that seller.
I know that. I'm not saying
All
that
we
you...
can do is force that seller to pay us a commission if it sells. We
And-
can't force them to sell.
And all you can do is just be aware of your exposure. That's all we're talking. That's what risk management's all about. Go over here.
I had 2 just like this. My first one, the seller did sell because we went back over what they were asking me to do. They asked me to list their home at this price. What were their goals? What were they trying to do? They needed to move into an assisted living. So really, this person offered them the opportunity to meet their goals and objectives.
All right.
And if anything else was bothering them, consult their attorney.
Yes.
They did. They accepted the offer. The second one, I represented the buyer. The listing agent was the seller, and he asked, this was a bad one because he took it off the market because he didn't want the neighbors, his prospective clients, to have this person with their possible use, because we have farmers that they may not want to be there, no crop farm. Anyway, and so he took it off the market rather than sell to my clients. They chose not to make waves. They could have, because they were an interesting group of people and they had an Asian ethnicity they could have used. I didn't bring it up because they didn't bring it up. But 2 of them, one was successful because of reminding the seller what their ultimate goal was. The second one wasn't, but then...
All I'm going to say is, was that more than a year ago?
Yeah.
Okay. Filing the complaint, 2 years to file a lawsuit. So you can file the complaint in 1 year, 2 years to go straight to a lawsuit. So document it, make sure it was methodical on what you have down so that if anyone comes back. So I'm going to ask you a few more and then we're going to take a quick break. Here we go. I don't want to do that one. Mr. Broker, your broker serves an area with homes owned by a wide variety of races, ages, and religions. The Caucasian broker's own children attend a school that's approximately 40% Caucasian, 10% African American, 30% Hispanic, and 20% mix of American Indian, and Asian. Buyer client asks, where do your kids go to school? If you like it, surely that's where I should send my kids. And what did I tell you? Your answer should be? I'm sorry, I can't respond to that. You're going to have to do your own due diligence. That's another couple words you love. Do your own due diligence. And let me introduce you to the principal of the schools, and then you tell me where you want to go, right? It's that simple.
So does then having a bumper sticker that says my kid was student of the month at blah, blah, blah school, does that risk this?
Yeah.
Not that I ever had a student of the month.
My kid didn't make the dean's list. Woo-hoo! It's like, yeah, so that's the only thing. It's about a preference, and it could be unintentional steering, and you want to be careful of it. That's all it is. Let's do this one really quick. Buyer clients, Mr. and Mrs. Ruiz, identify as Hispanic. They're financially qualified and have made an offer within $1,500 of the asking price. Your broker has shown the house a number of times, both the Ruiz and O'Brien families. She feels that an offer from the O'Briens might be forthcoming. The seller asks, can I wait for Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien to make an offer? The Ruiz family just doesn't seem to be the type I want to buy my home. How do you respond to the seller? What are you required by law about presenting offers? Yeah, you must present those offers in a timely manner. What does it say about responding to those offers? So could they choose to let it just expire?
But once you know that the reason they're doing that
There you go.
for a fair housing violation,
There you go.
you can't be involved in that.
That's right. So the moment you know that's the reason that they're trying to block someone else by not allowing that to come forward or just hold it off the market, not responding so that somebody else can come in and beat them out, you have an exposure. That's the only word I can say. If I'm not an attorney, it's the exposure that we're looking at. So the reason why we have most of this these would be fun to use with your people, is all I'm telling you. When you're doing education or doing a team meeting or sales meetings, take an opportunity to start taking some of these scenarios and talk about them, about what you can and you can't do. That's one of the reasons why I provide so many. So at this point, I think what I'd like to do, I think we've done enough on these. Let's go ahead and take our first break. Please come on back in 15 minutes, which means 5 minutes to the hour, if you would. Any questions, comments, thoughts so far about the first section? Scared, good. I've done my job. Good. Okay. See, we've got about, looks like we got about 7, 8 people still out. Want to make sure we heard anyone in the hallway down there? Let's grab them in. Anything that was covered in the first section while we wait for the next 3 or 4 people to get in? Anything that you didn't know before? Or hadn't thought about? Impact, yes?
Well, the school thing, because I live in a secondary market and mostly for resort ownership, but there is a school there and it's the only school locally, and my kids went there. And so when people come and they're looking to live there, not just as a second home, I'm like, oh yeah, my kids went there, had a great experience, telling them all about it.
Yeah.
Now there aren't any other choices within 15 miles either side. However,
Doesn't make a difference.
That's not a good practice.
No. So good for you. Thank you. As long as we get an aha or two. Yes.
I didn't even think twice about the little letter from the buyer.
Oh yeah, the love letters? Yeah. Didn't think about the impact on fair housing. The only way I would let my agents do a love letter is that they had to get a sign off from the buyer that if the seller does discriminate against them as a result of the information they provided in the love letter, that they would hold me harmless, and then I would have it notarized by an attorney. How many people do you think would want to write a love letter after I did that? They didn't. And it was that simple, and it kept it nice and easy. Now the question comes, what if you're the listing agent and the love letter comes with the offer right on the top and pictures of them? Pictures of the living family with the dog and woo-hoo, and you're going, oh my God, what do I do? And so the thing is, as a listing agent, what you know you must disclose, right? So you have to have this discussion right away with Victoria when we first meet that they're going to get love letters and because of fair housing rules and guidelines. Now, if I do decide to share those with you, I need an answer right now. And then I'm going to have you sign off on the disclaimer And I want to be protected by law that if you do decide to review these and you make a decision that's negative against this family because of what you just saw, that you're going to hold me harmless and we'll make sure we get that notarized by an attorney. Are you good with that? And she's probably going to say, I don't need that if I need the money and we're good. So again, you can set up some parameters. Just be careful with love letters. Yes?
It's not just negative against this family.
Right.
It could be a preference for this.
Of course. A negative, or it could be a preference, and therefore somebody else could come after you and say, look, because you allowed that. So again, what you do for one, you do for all. That's the most important thing to remember. So thank you everyone for coming in. We're going to do some quick sprint here. So we are now over on the top. You're going to see again, page 14 is what we've got. These are state-specific laws and practices. I'm going to kind of just work my way through these because I want to spend more time in our conversations than I do just reiterating state statute. First thing, let's take a look at what the real estate agency does. It's quality protection. That's what your commission does. So consumers, they take a look at escrow and development services. That's their primary responsibility. They take care of licensing and regulation of all real estate practitioners and brokers. And so they offer you a lot of guidelines. Much of this course and material came right from the statute, okay? Right from the articles and administrative rules and guidelines in this course. They give you you have exams, you have education that's provided. They do oversight of the courses. So of course this course was reviewed and to make sure to allow you how much CE you can get for this for broker training. They do that. Other things for AREA, they monitor activities in escrow organizations and real estate offices. These are your audits. How often do auditors come through your offices? I don't know.
It's 1%, apparently. About 1% of all licensees get audited.
Really, 1% of all licensees get audited?
Yes.
So,
Do a volunteer audit if you'd like.
oh, seriously? Yeah. And okay, how many?
They're really focused on client trust accounts in their audits.
Yes.
That's where most of the time their audit is. The rest of that world, they treat as by complaint driven.
Okay.
Rather than audit driven.
And a lot of that has to do with staffing, doesn't it? So when we take a look at that, Iowa didn't have an auditor for almost 12 years. 12 years, real estate companies were doing transactions. Nobody looked at anything. So it's like, I get hives sometimes. My first license was in Missouri and then Iowa for a while, so it's like, ooh, scary. So when we look at regulated activities, again, how frequently, so that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be following it, and you shouldn't be adhering, and this is where compliance comes into. The word compliance, I'm sure you're all very familiar with. Now, investigations, so again, this is where he mentioned about coming in from complaints. They'll have hearings, and they'll be filed against brokers, registrants, and real estate developers. So professional conduct and ethics complaints come for realtors. If you're a non-realtor, commission, right? Because they have to manage at a commission level. So if you're not part of the National Association of Realtors, it's different in how it's handled. You work with the commission. There are several websites that have been listed for you to review some of the administrative rules and guidelines, and they're all outlined. They couldn't be just easy. They're question marks and S's and all sorts of things. So they are hyperlinked, but not on your paper. So don't try to press on the paper and think you're going to go to the website. Someone did that in the class, and that was the funniest thing I ever saw in my life. They go, is it hyperlinked? And they press the paper. You know, you just want to take them aside and go, are you sure real estate's the business for you? Let's do this. I'm sorry, that cracks me up now. Okay, principal broker responsibilities. Let me click through these. This is your job. This is your job. So online, this is your direct supervision and the level of control, what is expected of you. So again, if I am your principal broker, what am I supposed to be doing for you in this room right now? I've got 35 of you in here. How am I supposed to be monitoring your performance? I have to be making sure that whatever goes out to the public reflects my brand and follows within what the guidelines are and admissible with the Real Estate Commission and the association if that's relevant. Taking a look at your agreements. Who is reviewing your contracts? Every listing agreement, every amendment, every purchase agreement, buyer representation agreement, property condition report. Who is looking at them and then making sure that it's okay? So as soon as they get a listing, do you allow them to put the sign in the yard that day, but you don't see the paperwork for 2 more days? So the sign's been in the yard for 2 days, and then you get the paperwork 48 hours later. And what if their signature's missing and it's not really a legal document yet? So you are now illegally advertising something where you don't have a representation agreement. I mean, I'm going to tell you the things that when I come in and I audit, I take 30 to 40 files, and I can tell more about your company by just taking a look at past business practice over 6 months and multiple agents to see where your hot spots are. You look at this, 7 days has to be accepted, rejected, or withdrawn. Now again, that's if the time of the essence clause is not shorter than that. Would that make sense? So we have to be careful, but you have 7 banking days. Is Saturday in Oregon considered a banking day?
Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday morning. But in Oregon it is not, correct? I think in Missouri they said Saturday as long as the bank was open, but see, they don't really log those accounts until the following Monday, do they? So you might accept funds, but it isn't registered or recorded until Monday. Document review. How about electronic hard copy? Some of you are using paperless pipeline, or you're doing everything through DocuSign. You've got everything uploaded in PDF. And are you having everything where you have a place for the reviewer name and date it was reviewed? And do they have the legal authority to approve what that document is? Or have you provided that authority in your policy? That's all we're looking at, just so that if I come in and audit it and say, well, you had your secretary review all these, and she knows nothing about real estate, but she's just looking to see that the blanks are filled in. She doesn't know that $100,000 property had something written up in the listing and it shows up at $1 million. Do you know I had a broker come in? So happy because she had a $100,000 property and she got an offer for $1 million. And she thought she was going to send her daughter to Harvard. My kid's going to Harvard! My kid's going to Harvard! I go, it's a typo. She goes, oh no. She goes, who would offer $1 million for a $100,000 listing? She didn't last long.
We just had one come through. It was a seller's counteroffer, and the original offer was for $325,000. The asking price was $330,000, and the seller's counteroffer went back and said $327,000. No, thousand.
Oh, $327.
Yes.
They forgot the zeros.
The other side automatically read those zeros in there and rejected it.
Wow.
Boy, aren't you lucky they said no?
It truly is amazing the technical, we rock and run so fast, and we're just not taking care of business, so thank you for that. Here we go, we can require your supervisory agreements as a hot spot, folks. This is one of the things that was identified by the research group that really needs to have attention paid to it. So these are your written supervisory agreements that happen within a business. So whenever you have a combination of 2 or more principal brokers in your office or licensed property managers, there needs to be some overall umbrella that says who's going to do what and how are we going to do it. So with that, it's supervisory control. It's about responsibility of the real estate activity that each principal broker will do. So it's possible, could not one just do all marketing? And one will do sales, team management, is that? So it's about delineation and breaking down of areas of accountability and responsibility. We look at it a default, a supervisory control. Who does a subpoena get issued to? So who is the overall managing broker, the one that's the face of the company? You're going to have to identify that, are you not? So because we don't, if you've got 5, I've seen companies with many as 6 or 7 brokers all own it. And they're all principal brokers, and they're just trying to figure out who does what. And then you go, well, who do I give it to? Is it good enough that I give it to him? But all he does social media, and he doesn't know anything. But is that considered delivered? Unless I know I have to go and give it to Victoria. So we just have to be careful. So defining default supervisory control and responsibility, making sure that if anything's omitted from the agreement, it's clear, understandable, who does what. That's basically how I read most of this law. Now we have a responsibility that if I'm put as the head or the main managing broker and the other principal brokers report to me, then what is my duty to you? How am I supposed to take care of each one of you to make sure you do your job? We have to outline that, make sure it's clear. You have to update your agreements, and again, especially if it relates to supervisory control. I've seen this often when we have 2, 3 principal brokers or brokers in an office. We just call them managing brokers. I have to remember my language, principal brokers. Is it possible you could switch from year to year? So she decides, I don't like people anymore. I just want to do compliance. I hate them all. And so she just does compliance, and she wants to get out of the active management. That's possible. Well, you better update those agreements. Shifting responsibility and how that works. Other things, sharing control and within the company, and if it's not covered by supervisory agreement. So if it looks at the financials, anything that is of a joint thing that you all have to chime in on, again, just be clear. Let it be written, let it be done. Same thing goes for licensed property broker, managers. You have to make sure that your criteria is listed very clearly for them. Next thing, RBM. Again, as I said, I'm going to do a sprint. Registered business name. Now, you're required to have an RBM. If you haven't, and you've got to register it with the state. There's been some confusion, I understand. All licensed brokers must conduct professional real estate activity under the name exactly as it's registered with the agency. Could there be some problem in the marketing that they're doing? That it doesn't match the RBM. So if this is not a discussion that you're happening or you're watching carefully in terms of advertising, you should be with your brokers because you could be violating some of the commission rules with this. Again, there's an annual renewal fee for your RBN. It's $50 a year, which is pretty darn cheap to do that. All licensed brokers must renew their RBNs, and then failure to renew your registered business name could result in all of your brokers becoming inactive. And then this happens. That's dramatic gopher. I put that in there this morning because I felt I needed that. So with dramatic gopher, I'm so sorry. I love that gopher. All right, let's move on. So again, we don't want them to become inactive. Expiration of the RBN is the last day of the month that the RBN was originally registered with the agency. So hopefully that clarifies some of that. And then we've got our e-license registration and renewal. You have to have the current address of the RBN, and then you need the list of all brokers within the RBN, and then you have a list of open client trust accounts have to be there. Agency must also be notified before an RBN moves its main office. Are you moving much? Are you finding a lot of brokerages moving around a lot? I've been noticing that in a few different areas. I don't know if it's just a regional thing, but a lot of people just like upgrading or downsizing a lot. I've been seeing a lot of downsizing. Running more technical offices, no more cubicles, and they're running agents out of their office, and so they're downsizing from 5,000 square feet down to 1,500 to save on overhead. So it's a trend that we're seeing, some more of a, like I said, more free-floating licensees out there. Oregon statute, this is your DBA, doing business as. Again, Oregon statute allows a real estate brokerage to operate under a DBA which may or may not match the name filed with the state of Oregon. So again, you're going to have your registered business name, but then you could, so I might be, well, mine's like Our Branch Inc. is my corporation name, Our Branch Inc. Makes no sense to anybody except for me. It was a stupid name, and I regret it. So my business name is Carol Murray, or whatever it might be. So I'm going to have a DBA. My company is Our Branch Inc., doing business as Carol Murray. So that is possible within the state, but you have to do the right paperwork. And you can advertise under the DBA name. And so your RBA name is Exceptional Realty Worldwide. Your official name under the market is Exceptional Realty Oregon, LLC. That would be like an example of an RBM versus what you're doing as business as. So you have different ones for different branches as well, right? So you could have one here that would be the west. This could be the east branch, south. I've seen a lot of that when you have multiple branches. Compliance. Okay, let's go ahead and study this. First of all, you have to turn your records in 3 banking days to the principal broker. That's the state. Is that all in your policy manuals? Do they follow it? So why not? Why don't they pay? Do you chase them for it? And then they do the lip thing? I'm not doing bit that. How am I supposed to go get that? I've got a listing appointment today. I mean, they give you the lip thing. So what do you do to make sure you don't get liver lips? We call them liver lips because you press them so tight they turn white like liver. You don't do stuff like that here, do you? You want to know what a dinglehopper is? I'll tell you about that later. Brokers, so 3 days, 3 banking days. That's what you get. 3 banking days needs to be turned in. You're the officers in charge of compliance. So you need to be riding them hard on that till they get into the habit. And you're going to get some prima donnas. They're going to say, look, I'm bringing in all this business and I don't have the time, et cetera. Excuse me, no. Because things can crash and burn, fail. I'm here to help you be able to do a lot of business. And there's procedures and processes here. I am your best friend ever. You don't have to worry about all the checks and pluses because I'm here to help you with that compliance. So by being of good service to them and making their life easier, but you've got to give back to me. It's all part of being part of my company. Otherwise, you're gone. That's it. I fired a $10 million producer. Wouldn't do it. You're gone. You're not going to follow it up. And he goes, well, you can't do that. I go, yeah, I did. It's already been mailed in. You're failing to bring in the documentation that I need. You're very lax and even demanding checks, and it's not even a legal closure yet. I don't have patience for that. So I love you. Kisses. Good luck. Kisses. Principal broker has to review the documents within 7 days of acceptance, rejection, or withdrawal. How many of you are looking at closed deals, deals that crashed and burned, and signing off on them? And then maybe asking questions. Why did they crash and burn? So you need some sort of documentation that that stuff is being looked at. Principal broker must maintain a complete, accurate, and legible records for a minimum of 6 years. There's some interesting accounting. I want you to check with your accountants as well. So your state statute says 6 years. Some accountants may say 7 to 8 years for financial records. So follow the advice of your CPAs as well as the state. And normally the CPA I found are more restrictive than what the state requirement might be. Again, documents, offers, whether accepted or rejected, received to the principal broker or to the client. What's kind of funny is I've been seeing and heard of a lot of licensees just dumping offers that didn't go anywhere. This online, right? So it's DocuSign, so they just delete it. I don't need it. You know, it never went anywhere. It just died, and they act like it never happened. You can't do that. So in our electronic age, how are you monitoring that? And then I think it's important to start tracking how many deals are crashing and burning with your licensees. Do you monitor the effectiveness of your agents? Uh-oh. Do I need to put the gopher in there? So effectiveness. So out of 3 deals written, how many went through? And you're coming up with a big fat 0? Then we have training issues. Or something's not happening somewhere, or a disconnect. So taking a look at that, signed written agreements, creating agency relationships. We will get into that a little bit later, because I'm going to be saying some stuff that you're not going to like. And I will buy you lunch today. Am I buying lunch today? Oh, cool, awesome. So I'm buying lunch so you'll like me more after lunch. Okay, signed written acknowledgement of agency relationships between a principal broker and their client. It's about the timing of these written agency agreements that we know is not happening. Signed written agreements for the listing, sale, purchase, rental, lease, lease option, exchange of real estate generated by a principal broker. You need to have that documentation. Again, any receipts issued by a principal broker in evidence of refunds. One person asked me, it was a broker, new into the business, accepted $1,000 earnest money and wanted to know if they photocopied the cash. And then they said, in order to do that, do I also need to put my palm on there so they have fingerprints to prove that it was me that had the cash in the photocopy? I said, no. And then I sent them off to the commission. I said, get clear rules and guidelines about what you need for cash, but I would suggest that you just do all the proper documentation. I walked them through the process, but so one person thought they needed their face photocopied. You wouldn't believe the questions I get. I get phone calls on very weird stuff. So no, just follow the guidelines. It's not meant to be hard. So here's what I want to ask you, and they don't even know I'm going to ask this. When are we going to start accepting debit cards for earnest money? Huh?
We do for rent all the time.
Yeah. Debit cards, think about it. So you put it into a trust account. There's going to be a fee required with a debit card. But couldn't you just say the funds would be received within 24 hours and then it becomes, because a debit card, you have to wait until it hits and the funds are transferred. But debit cards are becoming such a common form in transaction. I'm going to put it out there that it's going to be a conversation I think we're going to have to start having in probably the next 5 years. Because when's the last time you've really written a check for anything?
The title companies won't accept.
I know that. I know.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. This goes up. It's not just a simple question, because there's so many layers to this and what they will or will not accept. But the general consumer says, why is it so hard for me to have to do this and to do that, and when I just want to buy a house, when you could have just done that and it would have done. It's about ease. Our consumers will change our processes. I just want you to be ready for that. And I'll have a cool video for you later on. What? Okay. Copies, vouchers, bills, or obligations paid by a principal broker on behalf of their client. Got to keep that all on hand. Any other documents within the scope of agency relationship provided or received by a client through a broker during the term of the agency relationship. Keep copies of all your letters. Are you requiring that and asking that your agents keep copies of all text exchanges? It's all about documentation. Who said what? Who did this? It won't necessarily mean or sign on approval because you still have to sign on the dotted line. But again, what are you making them keep track of? We look at trust account records, and then I've listed where in the administrative rules and guidelines for trust account records what you need and what you don't need. So we've taken a look at some of those transactions on the normal compliance closing that also felt that we should mention principal brokers who continue transactions after you're changing your business somehow. So I'm on page 17 right now, and principal broker changes are pretty straightforward. A principal broker moving from one company to another. That can create some drama, and you can continue working on your transaction that was started at the first company only if there's a fully executed contract or an active written offer or a counteroffer or a letter of intent. So you can continue to finish it even though you're now working at this company over here. How many of you do that? I mean, is that something? Because in a lot of states, this isn't allowed. They will pay you the commission for it, but only an in-house person finishes the transaction. Would that make sense? So you're out. You moved over here and we finish it. But I found this was something I thought was interesting and rather unique in the Oregon record that you could still finish it. The principal broker, right. Principal broker moving. Yes?
We usually use some written documentation of that, allowing that to happen.
Right. And then but I wonder how much you can disclose to the new company. Is there a confidentiality agreement in that too? Right. It depends on, right. It depends on what the agreement, so how much you're allowed to. So again, I just found this fascinating. It's just my point of view from something I haven't seen from the norm.
And this is probably a question for them back there. But by principal broker here, are you talking about somebody who has the license that is principal broker, or are you talking about a supervisory principal broker who's changing brokers?
I believe we were conferring to the licensed principal. Speak up really loud because it's dying.
It would depend on the agreement you have with the company. That's why you have your joint supervisory written agreements. I mean,
Is this anybody with a principal broker's license? Does that mean that? Or
if your company allows it, if the manager in there says you're on your own and do your own thing, which I can't imagine many big companies would allow principal brokers to do that just because they're licensed as a principal broker if they're working within that company. It's all about company policy and how you guys, what are you doing in practice? That have a lot of agents. I mean, you're all principal brokers, but I'm guessing you're all not supervising principal brokers in your companies, right?
so you're talking about a principal broker with supervisory responsibilities here, or is self-supervised?
I think it's just a license, isn't it?
It's a license, but you couldn't, if you have a principal broker in your company working under you, I'm guessing you're not just gonna allow them to make the call on this. It's gotta be a company decision.
Right. Okay. I just thought it was unique. That was unique because it's taking information within a company and allowing another company to basically finish it when you're out of sight. You have to have the approval. Would that make sense? So if the client says, no, you can't, you move to another company, you would need client approval to have that documented. And with a written agreement between the sending principal broker and the old business receiving the principal broker with the new business. So in other words, you have to have the companies agree too that this is the transaction, and then you have to determine where the commission money is going. When everything closes, who's going to be responsible for compliance. Those types of things have to be in your agreement. In other words, the more you can get written down who's going to be doing what, where, when, and how, the better off you're going to be.
Did you say that we're unusual?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a recent statutory rule change that the agency allowed for this because it is a common practice. They just wanted to legitimize it through rule. But there are
pros and cons to this from a risk management perspective, regardless of what you have in writing, because in my opinion, company one still has all the liability from what happened in the transaction before it's transferred to company two, and just company two wanted, they're gonna be dragged in no matter what if something happens, even if things happen while the broker was at company one, there's just a lot of things to think about.
I thought that the rule change was to brokers generally, not just principal brokers. This
It
is just brokers.
But, right, but that's true, but you can't do it without your principal brokers. So, I mean, I guess.
But that's what happens
yeah.
most typically in the marketplace, is the
Yes.
broker leaves the company. And we're allowing the broker to continue to work the transaction under the existing principal broker of the previous company. That's what most of us are gonna see here as opposed to.
But the principal broker owns the transaction.
Correct.
Right,
Yeah.
which is still even stranger if you think about it.
Yeah,
Brokers
brokers.
left a company B and they're still working a deal. It's.
And here's where I think the logic of that is, why they're allowing this person to finish it, even though, because the consumer is already comfortable with that agent. And they don't like the upheaval that happens once they decide to live or get into that drama. But there's all sorts of corporate confidentiality. Like I said, this is the first I've ever seen. And again, not, at least in this area specifically, where you can continue to work on the transaction. It always was handed over to someone else in-house, and then they're just paid the commission. Once you're severed, you are severed because it's activities. And then what if you went over to the new company and their policies and procedures are different? Some of the things that they do are a little bit different, and they got to conform to the new company, or do they only conform to the old company, and could there be confusion? So I would just say, just be careful as you monitor this and be specific in your policies and guidelines, and if you've not addressed it, you should. And it should be step by step by step of what has to happen. Create some sort of a checklist to make sure you stay on top of this. Who's going to be responsible for what, where, when, and how? The agreement must have, how many of you look like that? Identify which principal broker is responsible for supervision and record retention. Who actually keeps the record? Identify the transactions that are included. State the effective date. Address any agency relationships. Because does the agency change some way, somehow? Specify how the compensation will be handled. I mean, what if, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Now look, I'm going to screw myself up. I'm here and I have a transaction. And I am a buyer's agent. And now I move over to another company who actually had the original listing. Do I turn dual?
If the principal broker is the same, you do. Yeah.
So I might, depending upon the agency status and how they set it, could I turn dual? And could the client not give me permission to do that? Yeah. So agency factors into this as well. I just got to think about that. Identify how the compensation is going to be handled, and it's got to be signed off by both principal brokers and the transferring principal broker. Account recollection, trust accounts. How many of you love your trust accounts? I love that. Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, I worked in a state that they still do all their own closings. They do all the abstracts, everything. It's all attorney. Iowa was like that. Everyone manages their own trust accounts. You wouldn't believe the issues that would happen. They don't use title companies or attorneys. So I'm glad that you've moved that off. But there are certain things that you still have to keep track of in terms of your accounting. So let me give you, and this is directly from the commission website on mail-in audits. Quickly, I'm just going to go through it. But I thought you'd like this. So here's the thing, you can't be that lax about trust accounts even though somebody else is handling them. So let's take a look at some of the issues that have come up in terms of mail-in audits. Audits compliance procedures apply to the brokerages who manage their own real estate escrow and trust accounts, so that's the first qualification. Common reconciliations issues are here. Trust accounts and security deposits are not being reconciled within 30 days of the bank statement. That's a big one. We have principal brokers are not reviewing and improving each one. Trust account reconciliations are not being completed in a single reconciliation document showing all the required components for balancing, because some people don't know how to fill in this stuff. The funds are being commingled with clients' funds. Trust account is an account that holds other people's funds. There was a broker in another state that confided with a sales associate that they were having marital issues and they didn't have the funds to pay their divorce attorney, and so they were taking money, borrowing it from the trust account. And then he goes, well, I pay it back, within like 10, 15 days. And I thought, how do you even reconcile that? And he'd been doing it for like 2 or 3 months. Wouldn't you notice that? That money's coming out, and then all of a sudden, like a miracle, it shows back up again. Very bizarre. So license removal, and the agent was concerned, and she said, well, could I be held and lose my license because of him violating trust account rules? You bet. I go, and you didn't disclose and didn't tell anybody, you have a problem. And that's how that came to my attention. Brokers may not hold their personal or business funds in a client's trust account. Corrective actions are not being taken to resolve adjustments made in reconciliation prior to the following month's reconciliation. How many of you have spent hours on 2 cents? I hate that. How is that possible that you use the calculator and you watch every number that you poke in and you do it twice and it doesn't add up? I do not know how that happens. Next, supervising in your advertising is another component that we take a look at that you've got to monitor. All advertising related to real estate activity must be reviewed. Here we go. Notice the words. Must be reviewed and approved by the supervising principal broker. So I'm just going to give you a moment to talk with each other at the table. You may choose to reveal or not, but I'm saying everything needs to be looked at. Are you signing off on everything? Just take a moment to chat. If you can hear the sound of my voice, let's go shh. May I ask how many of you find it a challenge? We have mavericks out there doing that, and this is my business, and I get to do what I want to do, and it's about immediacy. And you weren't around, I couldn't find you, and they needed an answer 2 hours from now, and so I just decided to run it. So we have some of these issues that come to supervision, and I think this is one of the hardest areas that we have as brokers, and it's also one of the larger exposures that we have, I believe, in risk management. One of the things, there are things that you might want to consider in terms of ad approval that I ran by you. I wanted to have available. Is it obvious that the ad is by a real estate broker? All the advertising should be identifiable as from a real estate broker. So that's kind of question number one. Does it look like it's coming from a real estate broker? Number two, next question, is it truthful and not deceptive or misleading? Is it truthful, not deceptive, or misleading? Because we know there's a difference between puffing and outright lying, okay? Little fixer-upper, and you know that it was flattened by some sort of a windstorm that came in.
Some of the photos you see, though,
oh,
deceptive.
Yes, they are.
Put boots on the ground and go, that's not at all.
That's right, and there's no even way that's the same house. Yep. We take a look to ad approval. Does the broker have the owner's permission to advertise? We made it a criteria that every single ad, flyer, whatever, just need to be initialed and dated by the seller. Do you do that? For permission. Because you wouldn't believe how some of them do need to sell now. They do motivation, which goes against negotiation and could compromise their getting the price. And the seller never saw that and go, what are you doing? Or they need to move right away. And they go, what are you doing? And now I got people asking me what's going on. I mean, you just sign up. Yeah. Let's just make sure again, and you get the advertising in the normal listing agreement, right? They give that to you, that you can put it online and whatever. But now we've got people with social media. Does that mean that you can now, buyer buys a home? They just closed on this house, and you show them in front of the house and put the address into social media to celebrate their move. Did you get their permission to reveal that? That's walking lawsuit material. You invaded my privacy. I don't want everybody in your network to know that I moved in and my address that you provided. Walking lawsuit material. We look again, does the broker have written permission from the property owner or an authorized broker before advertising any real estate? If the broker's name is on the ad, is it the licensed first and last name? Or we want to make sure if there's a DBA, some of them is sold by Rick. Okay, I'm Rick. No, Cher. I'm Cher. I could do by Carol, spelled my way. Sold by Carol. Is she a man? They think I'm a man. They see my name. People are so surprised. They look at me and go, oh, you're a girl. Yeah. My voice is so low, they call me sir a lot. So the name and the ad, is it identifiable with a certain person? Is the real estate company's registered business name prominently displayed? They're making it so small it's the size of a pin. And then you have to expand it online to be able to see the company name. Let's just tell them really quickly about, just think about a football stadium. It's really simple. Football stadium, and it has 100,000 agents and companies within the stands. And you have one seller in the middle of the field looking at all these agents, and you all look alike. The broker's job, with all the money that you spend, is to tell all of my company, okay, tomorrow you all wear red shirts and blue pants, and you show up in section C, and we're going to sit right here. So that when that seller stands up, he sees my company. Would that make sense? You see everybody that's right there. The agent's job is to stand out within the company. So you don't minimize the broker's brand, because it's established, it's solid, it's just bad business to minimize it, but it also is something that's not encouraged by law here. Prominently displayed and immediately noticeable.
Because I am blessed to have, I guess, the world's longest office name, we cannot use any materials from the MLS because the MLS doesn't have enough spaces for our entire name. And so all the property flyers and all that kind of stuff that's produced, MLS does not have our brokerage name in it. It's got some made up pretend portion of it. It's an abbreviation, but I'm always concerned. So I have to tell my brokers, you cannot use the property flyers. You cannot use those that are produced from Rock.
That's fascinating. Is there anything that's...
I find it more than fascinating. I find it anger-inducing.
Yeah, unless you do doing business as, and then you do it by initials. Just don't use PMS. Property management system, not a good one. PMS company, not good. Not good at all. But, just looking at this, can they do that? Is there some sort of an exclusion that you can do on a name that's so long that the MLS can't print it out on their records? It's really a good question.
I know that's shocking.
It shows
So
up
if it's
on the listing. It's just when they have the pictures.
When they got the pictures, it gets edited. In the MLS, their name is so long, it gets edited, and it's not really their legal name for advertising, and it requires that you have to have your full legal name on there. How do you handle that when the system doesn't manage it?
Send an email to the real estate agency and say that you're regulating this. This is a problem. I feel like this has been a problem at RMLS, and they addressed this. Have you guys not? Has this not come up before?
This is an SOMLS.
Is it on the public?
It's
I know it's
SOMLS,
SOMLS, but is it on the public side?
Well, and it all may change because we're getting ready to go from Rapatoni to Flex. And I'm pretty sure that
And then-
Flex will probably be a lot more forgiving than Rapatoni's The Good Old Boys Network.
Okay.
Is it
And that was a political statement from that chair.
I'm sure I'll get in trouble with fair housing.
So here's where we're going. It's about, do you do a DBA? Because if it can't print out and you want to make sure that it's consistent in all their documents, but that could change signage, it could change all sorts of things. So these are the types of elements that you want to do adhere to the law as best as you can, but this is where you make a phone call. And you talk about and say, I want to make sure that someone's been notified, we're aware of this, and we've done the best that we can. And there's certain restrictions that you have, because with all of this technology, everything has different parameters. The programming is different. You can move from one CRM to another, and everything changes the amount of space. You know that, changing the size. Adobe Acrobat, you can change the size of the wording and fit everything in, but now you can't read it anymore because it's so small because it doesn't do 2 lines. So let's just be careful that the question would be making sure you're adhering to it, you're doing your best efforts, and then cover your rear by making the contacts and the calls and the documentation, and then operate accordingly, is what I would recommend.
Is a notification in MLS? Is there a way to abbreviate your company name so that your colleagues and the public would recognize that you are a broker, a real estate brokerage? Private remarks, if we're just your colleagues, I'm sure it doesn't matter. For the public remarks, that's where the agency is going to be.
And that's it. We're talking about property flyers and those kind of things
Right.
that are produced.
Yeah, I don't think you could abbreviate it. Why wouldn't your name be able to fit on flyers? I mean, one thing is your MLS data feed.
Flyers generated by the MLS.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying it's a programming issue. It's a programming issue. You guys have fun stuff here. Yes?
I was just gonna say, Warren does now, they only have so many changes that they can make per year, and as Shelley said, we are just in the process of switching over. So hopefully, Christina, we will, with the long names that have to be abbreviated, be able to use these tools that are given us in the new Flex MLS.
Cool.
So,
thank you. Where I'd like to move from some of the fundamental things that we looked at is let's take a look at team advertising. This is getting creative out there. I can't believe some of the things that I've been seeing coming from teams, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion today and again tomorrow. But let's take a look at a brokerage, individual versus team advertising. First of all, what is advertising? I've listed that. Seems to be pretty straightforward. Bulletin board, telephone, greetings, whatever, MLS remarks, all that's considered advertising, what the public is viewing and making a decision on your company. The criteria in general, identity of the broker, truthfulness, correct license status, correct expertise, and property owner's permission is typically what's required for ad processing. Now I gotta preface this one. I think this is, I do a lot on branding, working with licensees and companies on branding. And my goal is to have you be as specific as possible as to what you excel in. I want you to be able to tell me if this guy knows his brand.
Hi, I'm Robert Lee. I own Coleman Liquidation. I sell mobile homes. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm going to tell it just like it is. These are mobile homes, not mansions. They come in two pieces. If that's what you're looking for, that's what I got. They're used. Some of them have stains. We'll cover that up. She decorates them. She sells them. These guys help me move them. A bouncer in Birmingham hit me in the face with a crescent wrench 5 times. And my wife's boyfriend broke my jaw with a fence post. So if you don't buy a trailer from me, it ain't gonna hurt my feelings. So come on down to Coleman Liquidation and get yourself a home. Or don't. I don't care.
Do they know who their market is? As long as they know who your market is and they know their name, it was prominently displayed throughout the entire ad. Coleman Liquidation, they did a follow-up on it, which is hysterical. So let's look at advertising criteria. Let's look at the electronic options. Submit all ads to the principal broker for approval. So you're going to still have to enter them in somewhere, but somehow get them submitted. Brokers should keep a record of the approval for each ad, and it must be made available to the commission or the agency upon their request. Electronic advertising is email, web pages, social media, blogs, all have to be approved. Now we've got some agents getting creative with video blogs, right? So with the video blogs, are they prominently having the company name displayed in front of them? Or somewhere on the video itself, or at least at the beginning of the video, and then interspersed throughout the video so they know this is part of your company. You got to think about these kinds of things, and it's easily edible. You can put that stuff into videos. Yes?
The state of Oregon also requires for electronic stuff that we have to say that we are licensed in the state of Oregon.
Right, most states do. Yeah, you must state that you are licensed in the state of Oregon, and if it's Washington and others, you have to list all states where you have a license. When we look at electronic, license name is required. The principal broker, sole practitioner, or property manager, what's the name? Statement that they're licensed in Oregon. Again, brokers don't have to include the name, rank, and serial number on the link to their web page that comes up on Realtor.com or their local MLS when consumers are searching the web, but they do have to have it on the first page that comes up when they click and go to your web page. Does that make sense? This is a big issue in social media because when you're doing a tweet, you have 240 characters now, and you may not be able to put your whole name on there. It just used up the whole 240 characters. So as long as there's a link, you know about TinyURL. Are you familiar with that? TinyURL.com. It takes a long website name and condenses it down into 6 or 7 letters. So you can do that really cool in social media. But this is important. So as long as they click on it And this has been a big issue for commissions across the country on monitoring social media identification, especially when it comes to LinkedIn, Facebook, and all of that, okay? Team advertising, the use of the term does not constitute the unlawful use of a trade name and is not deceptively similar to a name under which any other person is lawfully doing business. This is one of the criteria that we're looking at with the team. So I decided I'm going to have Carol's team, and I don't say anything about you, but I'm working for you and your company. Could that be a problem? Could I look like I'm my own real estate brokerage? Because I'm not showing that I'm part of your team. So we want to make sure that, first of all, they have to have the legal right to be able to advertise their name, and make sure that we prominently advertise your company and that the team name has been thoughtfully put together. Now, you want them to meet with you first before they start putting all their plans in place, and we're going to have something for you to work on tomorrow.
Is there any place that team names are registered? Because when it says deceptively similar to a name under which other person, I mean, I imagine there's a whole lot of real estate teams called the home team or whatever. Is there some place that's registered? So that
You can trademark.
Oregon Business. I have trademarked the Jones Group, and then I work for Sun River Realty. So our business name under Oregon is the Jones Group, and that's registered. We pay for that year after year, and then we put it with Sun River Realty's logo. And so we have developed our own logo that way.
So
that
I
way
could
both
not,
of
even
them.
though my name is Jones, I could not use the Jones Group as part
Correct.
of my business.
Because it's trademarked.
That's why I'm asking.
And you would just you would have to research it. You'd have to go and look for registered trademarks.
It's available. It's not.
Yep.
Because I always pay for it again and again.
Costs money.
Yeah.
All right, the team of the group has to have at least one real estate broker, one licensed broker. We look at the broker members of the team associated with the same principal broker or property manager. So in other words, they all have to come under one broker. So I decide I'm going to have this group as my team. So I'm the lead. I call it the lead broker, and then you all work underneath me. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this can get really messed up. We look at the broker members of the use. Each broker's license name is required under the section of this rule. So do you do this where, again, we've got John here. Do you write a listing with your name on it? And then if for your team, it would be each individual member of your team would write the listing, and they would say like Jane Doe, the Jones Group.
Correct. We do everything, all of our listings and our sales under our two principal brokers. We're both principal brokers. We're not managing principal brokers. So everything's under Bryce C. Jones, Nola Horton Jones. That way. When we advertise, we always advertise with the Jones Group at Sun River Realty, and then we list our names and our principal broker status. Plus, we have another broker who is just a broker. Her name is under that as well.
Would that
so
make
we
sense?
have to do that, all of it.
It's about notifying the public. Who's working for who, what your license status is, and moving on. It's a hierarchy and defining that clearly. So that's what they're looking at in terms of Section RE. Non-licensed people must be clearly state that they're not real estate licensees. So if you include them on there, you would put that they're a secretary or a transaction closer. Advertising complies with this chapter. Have fun reading this chapter. It is very inclusive, very specific. So when you're getting ready to prepare your team language and your policy manual, because if you've not established that in your policy manual, you should. Do it in advance. Make sure everyone's aware, because we're having more and more teams develop. 2 people can be a team. One works with buyers, one's worked with sellers, and then they decide one takes the lead. I mean, we can do that with 2 people. So we're seeing more and more of this across the country. What I've got for you is a question. So whenever we see these raised hands, this is a town hall that I'd like you to just think about, and then I'd like a response from you in a conversation. So as the principal broker, advertising compliance with the Oregon Revised Statutes is a main responsibility. It's your responsibility to provide the steps for advertising approval to all brokers. Discuss the steps to be followed before an ad can be placed on social media, in the paper, or as a video, and ensures prior principal approval. So who would like to share with me, how on earth do you do social media? What are some thoughts? Let's help each other here and how we can be better at monitoring advertising. Who's got some thoughts? Yes, and speak up, please.
We make it a policy that all of our brokers must send us the text of the content with any social media postings, and they can't post it until they've received an acknowledgement that we've approved it, and they must keep the receipt of the acknowledgement of that approval.
Okay, did everyone hear that? so what they do is they ask for them to send them a text of whatever they're going to put into social media, and they're not allowed to post it until they get back an acknowledgement that this is okay to go ahead and post, and then they're required and mandated to maintain a copy of that approval so that if they go back and audit, so they put it back in their lap to maintain the documentation for tracking social media. Any other thoughts on social media? This is the one that just gets a little hairy out there. Any other thoughts? How about
I have a question regarding that. What's your turnaround time on your approval? Because social media is real time sometimes, and you got a broker that's out in the field saying, "Hey, look, I'm right here."
So
doing this.
So what we haven't touched on is live video.
Right, that's what.
How do you manage that one?
Live video, okay.
Jenny, isn't the real estate agency looking at setting up a task force to help
They
understand
do
that
into
environment
the-
and make a change?
Out of the dark ages?
Yeah.
Yes,
They
that,
said that in
they
October.
recognize this is a problem under the current advertising rules and the way you all do business now, and they're finally taking action. Now, I can't tell you how quick the action's gonna happen, but at least they recognize it needs to be changed.
Couldn't they just get a placard sign like they do like at chicken places? And Carol Murray team, here's my live video on Facebook. Carol Murray live, and then I got my advertising. I solved it. Yeah, and it doesn't go to approval because it's live, because the link uploads immediately.
And one of the things here in Oregon, all advertising complaints are peer-to-peer typically generated because most consumers aren't damaged as a result of your advertisement. So the agency has sort of turned a blind eye, and now, I mean, there's been a couple of repeat offenders that they have to take action on, so there is some disciplinary actions, but overall, it is peer-to-peer, and they might get a letter, an email, hey, did you know your website is, or whatever, you're doing things in violation of the advertising statute. I truly believe that most brokers and principal brokers are inadvertently doing, they don't necessarily realize they're violating real estate agency law. Once they're told, they correct it, and it's the repeat offenders that they're really going after, which they should, right?
Thank you.
There's been some big, so just be cautious, and if the agency gets a complaint, they'll send you an email, hey, did you know? And you'll say, no, I had no idea, even though you might have, but that's not the point. Then you just correct your behavior, and all's good. So.
Okay? Yeah.
So what do you all think of this from if somebody does a live video in front of their open house and says, this is my name, licensed broker with such and such company coming to you, at this address? I mean, is that, you guys think that's enough disclosure?
So it's an open house, right? A video. Just say, hey, I'm Carol Murray, and I've got a house open. This is 1513 Station Street. Join me today from 1 until 4 o'clock. I work for ABC Company, and our phone number is, and then that's it. Would that be okay?
You mean
What do you think?
spontaneous like that?
Yeah, spontaneous.
No, because you haven't gotten the review. But I would do something with your company ahead of time. Hey, I'm doing an open house once a month at this property. Here's going to be my standard message. Do you approve it? I won't deviate from this. And then you have approval. And whether, I mean, that's better than nothing from the agency's perspective, that you have cleared it.
Because the problem is they start off with that piece and then they go straight into, wouldn't this be perfect for a family?
Yes. Yeah. Then they don't know to zip it. Ship it, edit. So how many of you are using Animoto.com? Animoto.com. Animoto.com is a really excellent website for creating video shorts that you could create a lead in, which would have all the company logo, brand name and everything, a little clip that lasts for about 7 seconds, and then you can drop in your own personal video, and then you can have an ending with a reminder of the video clips. Animoto does 30-second videos beautifully and allow you to be able to put in text, address, whole bunch of really cool things. So Animoto.com. And then I would also recommend you get really comfortable using Camtasia. Camtasia, C-A-M-T-A-S-I-A. C-A-M-T-A-S-I-A. It's by TechSmith, and it's a video editing that works wonderfully. So even like this PowerPoint, the webinars were all done in Camtasia. It records it, I'm able to talk into it, and then I can go and I can edit it, and then upload it, and it turns into an MP4, and you're off and running. So it's really pretty cool on how you can do some of this stuff, and you can create an Animoto video. I might even show you an example when we come back, if I remember it, that can be done in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes to
Well,
create.
that's all fine and dandy, But when you have Instagram stories,
Oh, yeah.
Facebook Live, they aren't even gonna, they're not gonna go to that
Yes.
and then take the time to, wait a minute, I gotta load it to this, do the video, now load it to
Okay.
this, then I gotta do it to this. They're not gonna do it.
So
It's
now-
much easier to take a selfie, click Instagram story, done.
Cool. Would that make sense?
I think it's personal preference. It depends on how you want to market yourself.
It'll be a
short video. It carries a lot of weight on social media. You create the video, you upload it to your team page, homepage, whatever.
It is an age thing.
And then it's definitely
I think it's
generation
more
business.
important that, this is just my personal opinion, but that when somebody has an Instagram story and they click through to their Instagram account, that's where they need to have, like you had talked about, when you're clicking through on a video to a website, whatever, I feel it's very important that a Facebook page and Instagram page has who they are, who their broker is, all of that information. I think it's a bigger violation when you look at these Facebook pages, you can't even tell which company they work for.
That's correct.
Well, and the difference between personal pages and business
Yes.
pages.
Yeah.
And how many people inadvertently post to their personal page, which clearly belongs on the business page, and they're not identified on the personal page.
Our reality, when we take a look at trying to figure out what we're going to do internally, and the type of agents, the age of your agents that you have, does that all make a difference? And then you take a look at the clientele that you're working with and how you're directing it. Or if it is a long sale, if you're in luxury brand, you could be out there marketing for a year to 2 years on something. And so you're going to establish something very different than you might for the immediate bread and butter listings that I'm very familiar with and turning and working with those. So all of that takes a look in terms of your approval, but I want to know what you would do with this, because this happened to me. It said, you're enjoying your coffee, a broker in your office comes in to share their brilliant idea for an advertising campaign in print and online. As they show you the obviously expensive mock-up of the campaign, you almost spit out your coffee. In fact, the issues become evident. Marketing to only single white females under the age of 35 plus without children. They read the most recent NAR statistics and feel that it's an untapped market. Their new tagline, FEM, Female Expert Marketer. How do you handle that? What do you do?
You tell them it's against company policy and it's against real estate laws and fair housing and any other number of things.
But wait a minute, I just spent $10,000 for all of this. I went through a huge marketing company. It's all done. It's ready to launch.
Congratulations, you wasted $10,000, but you're not going to go to jail.
Okay, so would you feel bad for telling them you can't use it? Because this was $10,000. She invested $10,000 because she went to a fancy seminar that came into town, and they said, you know how that goes sometimes. You know this national speaker, that was like me. You come in and they say, do all these wonderful things, and then they get so excited and ramped up, and then they spend that money and they forget to tell you.
So what she could do, or the advice you could give, is they could change the target in the actual words, but they could buy demographic information to target that market, you know, where their ads get placed. That's not, I don't think.
No, it is.
It is now.
It is now.
It is now.
Yeah.
If you go to Facebook and you go post an ad and you try and dictate that it goes to 35 plus or less than 65, you absolutely violate it.
It's new.
Yeah.
It's a new one.
And they won't do it anymore.
Facebook will be right.
Yeah, you're aware of that, right? So you can't, this geographic marketing and people marketing is creating, you got to be really careful. What you do for one, you do for all. Billboards are even another big one, that you want the golf community. You want to only get the people that are around the golf course, so that's the only billboard you want. Well, you need to rotate it, because you have to let people know that you'd also work on the homes that are at $75,000 over here. Waterloo, Iowa, we had homes for $20,000. You could put them on a MasterCard. You didn't even need to get a mail, just charge it and then buy the house. But you had to be able to be available and have the appearance that you would work for all levels of people that want real estate. So it becomes an issue here. So target marketing, even though it's a interesting idea and it's usually very profitable, because the more you specialize, niche marketing, you've heard that, right? Niche. Do you call it niche or niche? Niche. Niche? Okay, raise your hand. How many are niche? How many of you are niche? Yeah. I got corrected. I got interviewed in London a couple of years ago, and I said, well, you got to go find your niche. And she goes, Carol, it's niche. I go, no, it niche, it rhymes with, and she goes, Carol, that's enough. I was going to say ditch, but I don't know what she thought I was going to come out with. But when you look at that, so it depends on the market and where you're at. So it's specializing, but then how do we make sure it doesn't invade into the fair housing? That's the problem.
It's the same as the golf one, because the golf one is, I want to specialize in houses that are upwards of 750,000. That is not a fair housing issue.
Actually, geographic locations of billboards is, and it's there on the HUD website. I found it, and I scared the daylights out of me that it needs to be rotated. It needs to be, you can't have the appearance of, or like only putting flyers in at the golf club. You only put flyers there because that's the only clientele you want to work with. It has a sense that you're discriminating and won't work with anybody else that doesn't go into the golf club. I argued with it. Kansas City ran into major problems with this, so it's a hot spot with me, and you got very careful with doing it. It's interesting. So if you can rotate it, which you can, you should. I'm just telling you, most conservative, remember I said that? Most conservative, you decide what you want to do. Yes?
Which is not to be confused with desiring to specialize in a particular
That's
area.
correct.
So I could be a luxury market specialist.
Yes.
Be a senior, get my SRES
Yes.
designation. It's just saying that if I happen to have a client that's a senior citizen, I'm better able to serve them. Or
Yes.
if I have a luxury client, I'm better able to.
This is where my expertise is. And by the fact of your expertise, it starts weeding out. Just like if you need to have a heart operation, do you not look for the person that specializes in heart operations rather than a GP? Would that make sense? But you have to make sure, though, it doesn't go to the exclusion that just because you do operate in hearts, you can help them as well. So I want to make sure that, yes, I'll give you as good a service for a $75,000 home as I will for the $1 million. I just have to make sure that the public knows I'm available to them. But you'll find that just because of your expertise and then the word gets out, that your business model starts changing. Yep. Saw a question over here? No? All right. Disclaimers. Let's have some fun here. We've got about 30 minutes. Lunch is going to be where? A buffet outside here? Okay, cool. So in about 30 minutes, we're going to have that here. We're going to get to a good point here. I think that we'll be able to do that. I love disclaimers. What disclaimer did I make right off at the bat? What did I tell you? That I'm not a lawyer. Didn't I say that? I said that right off the bat. That's a disclaimer. So these are just my opinions only and what I'm providing for you, and I'm looking at it from a broker point of view. That is a disclaimer. So I'm giving you on notice what I will do. Talked about sprint and drag. I laid the groundwork. Disclaimers of what's acceptable or not, and are we all in agreement? When we look at disclaimers, it's a public on accountability, what you're willing to accept for the information that they provided. It's a kind of I provided in the handout, I believe, some wording for you. It's on your marketing material. It makes it clear that you're a real estate practitioner. They're usually at the bottom of an advertisement. Have you been getting some of this? We'll buy your house if we don't get it sold in 90 days. And isn't there usually a little caveat, little star, subject to certain terms and conditions? You know, click on this website and to do that. So again, we have to make sure that they're aware of that it's not a hooded thing or something that surprises them. We never want them to be surprised. We have attorney-written disclaimers. We talk about due diligence, do we not? Do you have something from Megan's Law? Someone wants to know, are there any sex offenders in the neighborhood? What disclaimers do you do? Here's the website. So you provide resources and say, do your due diligence, right? So
Have you seen our buyer's advisory? Have you not gone to our website, seen this amazing risk management tool we provide our members so that they avoid this?
It's glorious, but it's 15 pages long.
It's 50.
You want to be the resource for your client and give them everything. It's everything a buyer could want to know on purchase. We just are updating it. And the seller's advisory. I mean, it's you don't have to use it. It's a voluntary tool, but it's a great risk management tool for you. And it's intended to be web-based, so they can get right to the links to look. A sex offender lives in that neighborhood, or whatever their issue du jour is.
So this is about using the tools that are available for you. Wouldn't that make sense? We're about being more cautious. More cautious. This is one that I used. An attorney wrote it for me. I don't remember, Nebraska. But again, anything that you use, you want to have your own real estate attorney approve before you put anything out for the public to sign. So Carol Murray has made every effort to obtain the information regarding these listings from sources deemed reliable. However, we can't warrant the complete accuracy thereof of subjects to errors, omissions, change of price, rental, other conditions, prior sale, lease, or financing or withdrawal without notice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, pretty straightforward. It's not a recommendation. It's just an example of something that I felt comfortable with using, not necessarily dictating this is something you should use. Did I do that well, Jenny? Yes, I did. Go ahead.
So how does that stand up, though, to a claim against, they said the bedroom was 10 by 10, it's 10 by 9, 11. How does that disclaimer stand up in real life?
Because our company policy was never to measure rooms. Yeah. For example, we never had it challenged ever. So I can't tell you what was the result of it. They looked at it and they said, okay. It was basically our due diligence clause. And this was something that appeared as an addendum to any listing and to any purchase agreement. So you think about the things that people want to come after you for or questions that they might have, disclaimers. How many of you do clauses and conditions? Subject to. Do you do those types of things here? Right, okay. So it's subject to the buyer finding a home or subject to the seller, whatever they might have. You will find what we thought was we got really hives because they were doing the unauthorized practice of the law. They write really creative stuff in their purchase agreements. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. And so what we did was we had a meeting and I would gather you all together and I would look at the past offers for the last year and I copied every single clause that any agent wrote. And then we voted on the top 10 that were most often used and would be most practical. Then I sent them to an attorney. And I said, please, give us a clause that we could write that would address this issue, like the washer dryer, the personal property stuff. Give me a clause. Well, they wrote them up, and then we couldn't read them because there were a lot of therefores and whereas. And so we made little edits, and then we went back and forth like 3 times, and we ended up with something that the attorney could live with and we could live with. Then we basically handed it out to everyone in the office. Said, whenever this issue comes up on personal property, this is the clause you use. And now I have...
Outside of those 10, though.
What's that?
You have a different type of issue come up. What do you do outside of those 10?
Well, outside the 10, then they have to come by me. And then we called the attorney and had attorneys work with us to write them up. I was very strict, but we had a 98% closure rate, and we grew in 1 year from a $15 million company to a $78 million company. And we in 1 year and grew from 4 agents to 27 agents in 1 year, and they all complied because they knew that was one of the guidelines. When you come in, we're going to provide service for you. We're going to protect your rear. We're going to give you the tools that you need, and it's a collaborative effort. And we were and we closed 98%, usually under offer within 22 days, at about 99% of the original list price. And I have the numbers to show you on a spreadsheet that I tracked, which I've given you a webinar on things you can track. So when you look at that, it's all about quality and control. What can you do and have the attorney be your best friend? Shooting from the hip is probably the worst thing you can do. I just slow down, people. Slow down. Because I'd rather deal with no problems than all these fires I see so many brokers working on all the time. We look at a couple other things. In brokerage marketing, are there any other disclaimers that you use? Like you talked about the square footage, right? Deemed to be reliable. Yeah, that's a tough one because we have people that just have no clue how to measure anything. What else would be other disclaimers that you would use? You don't use any others? Okay, home inspectors. Have you? There you go. You asked me, home inspectors. So I give you a list, home inspectors. You usually recommend 3 to 4, whatever. You never do this, right? But you know the one you want to work with? Number 2. You don't do that, right? But do you have any disclaimers on there? On quality? And your relationship to the outcome? If you want that disclaimer that I used, I don't even know, did I put that in there? Kayla, do you remember if I put that disclaimer in our handout for the home inspectors on a form? Yeah, we might not. If I don't have it, we don't find it. If you want a disclaimer on home inspector, basically said we've made this accommodation or recommendation to you, and it's hold no guarantee that Carol Murray, real estate licensee with XYZ company, will be held responsible for any quality or outcome as a result of the inspection, And it just basically was a sign off saying, look, I'm doing this as an accommodation. You asked, you pick, and then we'll follow through and set it up. That's what a disclaimer is designed to do. Okay? So it's not a hold harmless agreement. It's basically just putting them on notice that this is an accommodation. If they ask for crime lists, what's the crime in the area, and you want to hand them paperwork, that disclaimer would be on the top. And I would hand it with the paperwork from the sheriff's office with my disclaimer on the top. You never transfer information from another entity onto your own letterhead. Same way when you're getting geographic information, you get the census information, hand it from the census, and then put your disclaimer on the top. This is information gathered from, deemed to be a reliable source, et cetera, et cetera.
Aren't those things, the crime statistics, the census stuff, isn't there just a fair housing minefield there?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be better to tell them where they can find this information?
And that's what the choices that you make. So her statement was, is that not a walking landmine when we start deciding on disclaimers or specific information, especially related to crime? Isn't it better just to give them reference, say where they can go look? Absolutely. Those are the choices you make. You decide where you feel comfortable within your brokerages, and then what you do for one, you do for all, and you monitor it. That's why we love our brokerages and gives us the freedom to create an entity, a business entity that all operate in our own special ways, but hopefully conform to the law. That's the advantage of it. All right, journal reports. We've got about 20 more minutes. Hang in there. I know some of you, I see the whites of your eyes. I am so sorry. The whites of your eyes. It's a little scary up here. All right, so page number 23, let me give you some things from the OREA, News Journal Reports, and these are transaction issues. Came up in the audits, not handling hard conflicts as they arise. Hard conflicts, I'm trying to figure out what hard conflicts are. Inadequate documentation that doesn't clarify the business relationships or issues that came up when they did auditing. Legal representation focused on breaking a deal rather than rectifying the concerns. So the whole thing was just to smash it instead of trying to put it together. Parties feeling abused during the process. So now we're going to take a look at attitude. How are you handling it? Are you being consistent? Are you being professional? All these things are going to look at with the transaction. Again, that gets into the gray. That's going into the gray, isn't it? So some of this is not going to be black and white, and it's how you manage your business. No clear timelines. Last-minute schedule changes that you're doing. Erratic. Anytime you're doing erratic procedures and processes creates an issue within the mind of the consumer. You didn't maintain your due diligence in eliminating title obstacles, exceptions, liens, environmental discoveries, the due diligence. It's amazing how many agents aren't meeting their clients anymore. Have you noticed that? They're getting further and further away from their clients. So it's a concern that we might have, and then they're not following up on the stuff. And they go, well, the attorney will handle that. And then they're not doing their due diligence and monitoring it. So are you being made aware of something that's coming up in the transactions? How are they communicating with you on what's going on with a transaction? They didn't secure the correct legal descriptions. I saw a home that closed, and the legal description was the red house on Adams Street. That was the legal description. It closed. Nobody corrected it. Now, my wondering was, is that really a legal closing? And I took it to an attorney, and they said, you know what? Because it was transferred to all documents. I'm talking all documents through the closing. The legal description was a red house on Adams Street. And he goes, this is not a legal closing. I go, I know! Had to go back through and do an addendum and amend it so that everyone agreed on the proper legal description and then kind of redid a mini little close. Nobody caught it. They just typed in garbage and garbage comes out. Scary. Yep.
We had to do that just recently on a piece of vacant land that sold. The MLS requires a number of an address. So the address was 0 because there was no number. Fruitdale Drive, and all the agreements and everything said 0 Fruitdale Drive instead of tax lot blah 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 blah
right.
blah blah.
Right.
And so we had to. I'm embarrassed that it took me about 3 go-rounds before I actually noticed none of this makes any sense. And so we required an addendum that specified it, but I found it really interesting that at no point did the escrow officer
Right.
say, wait a second, there is no. So you can't rely on the escrow officer to
pick
pick
it
up
up.
on those little errors.
No, you can't. And that's basically really emphasizing my point, is the duty, diligence, and care has to start with you. Has to start with you and it ends with you. Because this is where it's all going to come back at you. Your transaction. These are other agents that are helping you and assisting with you, but I still find it appalling that like I said, the title people didn't take care of it. Prepayment penalties. Do you allow prepayment penalties here in Oregon?
Oregon is federal.
Mm.
Thing. For Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, GSE.
Yes, they're allowed, but they're not really common.
Okay, because several states are passing that in-state lending institutions are not allowed to do prepayment penalties, because it's a recapture, right? That's what they want. They want their money back and all the interest that they would have gained if the loan had gone through the whole length. So prepayment penalties is something you want to keep an eye on, is something that's being addressed state by state, and there's federal guidelines, like I said, for the mortgage piece of it that are allowed or not allowable, but then when you get into some of these unique, you're going to see them, and it could be a huge impact. 6 to 10%, I've seen, of the mortgage value. So it gets hurtful, very hurtful if it's not taken care of. Lender delays. Who's monitoring those? And who's monitoring what the lenders are doing? So these are transaction closing issues, and we don't understand why there's a delay. Not reporting to the agency within 10 business days of an opening or closing of a client trust account. So 10 business days is all you have. Improper use of a drone. And your mind can go anywhere with that, with a drone. So what does that mean? And then you're using these drone images, and do you have to sign off on any properties that you flew over and you put on the video? Do you need clearance on that video? That was something that came up, and I go, I don't know. Do you? So scary, because you want to show the outlying area. And now you've just displayed somebody's private property up on a drone that's going onto a website that they didn't give you approval for. Do you want to get hives yet? Let's find all the ways we can make you want to do another business. Go into insurance. No one talks to you in parties. I'm just saying. So, reality. Here they do, right? Not in a lot of areas.
No, federally.
Yes. I know. And it's been interesting, though. We've had some people dodging it. Like in Missouri, we're seeing it. I found 3 drones. I thought it was like one of those, what's that disappearing plane? The stealth bomber. I thought it was a stealth bomber, but it was actually just a drone coming in really close. When you have bad vision, that's what you think first. How many of you would go to stealth bomber, or would you go to drone first? Yeah. I went to stealth bomber. That's what I thought was coming over, and it was a drone. And there's the guidelines, you're not supposed to, and went to the neighbor, and it was a young kid, got it for a birthday present, and flying it everywhere and filming everything he could film, and he was having a blast, and they don't pay attention. All right, here's our complaints and our violations. Thought I'd give you these for the last couple. 217, 218 have no 219 numbers. So here we go. Misrepresentation and fraud. These are the complaints that come up to the Real Estate Commission. Doctoring well tests in a transaction. Falsely created a mortgage pre-approval letter with the intent to defraud. Let's see here, another one. An email, broker included engineer's stamp and submitted the altered letter with the closing documents at escrow without engineer's knowledge, and then changed the phone number by 1 digit to prevent anyone from calling the engineer. That takes work. Would you agree that takes work? How about using a proxy to complete an online education in order to renew their license? So yeah, they're going in and they looked at the webinar and they clicked and they filled it in, and this is a whole discussion on Join.me that I could spend 30 minutes with you on, because we don't know really if the true people are signing contracts. When you use .loop or DocuSign, can you guarantee you have 2 different people doing the different signatures? I know that if they sent an email to my husband's laptop and mine, I could do them both. Just sitting there, type it in, he'd never know. So how can we prevent that? You use Join.me. Join.me, and you present the offer and have them sign as you go, and you get them both on a telephone conference call, so you know the parties are there, and you walk them through the offer, and you're using Join.me, and they can see you as you go through the offer and say, do you agree to this? Okay, initial, because you're going to have them open up the .loop on one screen, Join.me on the other, as I go through and review it and say, okay, we're all good on page 1, initial. and I can see, then they'll initial, and then we move to page 2, 3, 4, and then if there's going to be a counteroffer, I can draw up a counteroffer and start typing. They can see me in real time doing it, and I got their voices on the phone, and I know who's there. Solved. Now we know.
But if it comes down to it, I understand what you're saying, and
Yes.
I totally get it, and 90% of my people are remote sellers or buyers. But am I the one responsible if two people are signing the, I mean, am I responsible for proving?
Very good question. So let's ask. All right. So we've got a join.me, and I did this thing. Husband didn't even know the offer came in. He didn't know it. And I put the little laptop together and type. And now I am Rick. Type. Okay, cool. Everything's done. He doesn't even know I did it. And I say, hey, guess what, honey? We sold the house. He goes, awesome, Carol. I have no power of attorney. No right to do that. Agent. Are they responsible or not? Make an argument for why an agent would be responsible. Let's start there. One at a time. Give me one. What?
If the agent knew about it.
If the agent suspected and knew about it, right? Oh, I know that. Just responsible. That's what we're going to find out. I want to get a feeling. We're asking the question rhetorically, so let's find out. So your feelings on it. So she has used .loop, and she gets the signatures back in 30 minutes. Wonderful. Done deal. How should she be held responsible? Go here, and I'll go there. How could she?
Well, I'm saying that when they accept and make their signature, that they're accepting responsibility for that. So the person that does that is legally responsible for that action. So that does give you at least a bail and,
So it's the dot that's checked. So I hand here first, yes, and I'll go back there.
I guess I take the opposite position, that the agent shouldn't be responsible, because you can't be responsible for somebody called doing fraud.
Okay, so the agent shouldn't be responsible because you can't be responsible for someone else doing fraud, right? You're not at their house. You don't see what they're doing, and the timing seemed reasonable, so okay. How about here?
I bet you also sign a disclosed limited agency where you represent both parties. So whether it's both sellers and they both have to sign it. So if the wife signs for the husband and the husband doesn't know it, the husband can't he come back to you as the agent and say, you represent me too? And she signed for both of us? Not.
So her question is that now the wife signs, I just signed for both of us, and couldn't the husband come back to her and go, what are you doing processing a thing? I never signed this. She did. She did that. Could she be held responsible for allowing that transaction to move forward? Over here, and then I'll go there?
Yeah, so I mean, the bottom line is when they're getting a loan, the lender's doing both sides and they're getting them to do stuff. And no matter what, when they close, someone's going to notarize it. What you're saying is when it doesn't close, what happened? And if you're sending out things and you're only communicating with one side, that would be your clue. If you're sending out like emails and saying, hey, like in your case, what about the inspection you should be getting some indication that you're having a response from somebody. Doesn't mean they're the primary person. So that would be your clue.
And we do that, but when it comes down to sitting there with the signatures, I have no idea who's actually going into whose email. Right. I happen to know my husband's email passwords. I could go in and do the same thing.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. The opportunity exists.
But what I'm saying is the conversation in the transaction, if you have no conversation with one party, ever, and at the end, they say, I didn't want to sign the transaction and close, you would go, yeah, well, that kind of makes sense. They didn't know about it. But if there is conversation, then you're not going to have that problem. So it doesn't really matter if they forged it or not. Because at the end of the document is it has to be notarized.
All right, I'm going to move here. Yes, lovely.
Listing contracts or on offers usually is something that I talk to the people about initially in the first contact, especially if they have a shared email address, and talk about the process behind that, and are they okay with that?
Okay. Okay, and your comment.
My comment is that the question comes, should we have known? Not did we know, but would a normal person have caught on that this is iffy? And I think that's where the legally comes down to, and I think the jury's going to say you should have known.
Okay.
I'm just going to listen to this with new ears and say it's not a practice I've done to this point, but going forward, if there is the ability to ensure that doesn't happen, then the obligation is on me to ensure it doesn't happen. So
because I just gave you a way to be able to do that.
If the thing to do it, then that's what I would do.
Yeah,
I've not done it in the past. Hasn't been an issue.
All right, yes?
So something that I've done and a couple of my agents have done is that when you have a husband and wife and you get an offer in and you're submitting that, say I've sent you, we text them or give them a call, but you add both people to the text and just send that one text that goes to both of them and say, hey, just want to let you know, I sent you an offer to take a look at. I'd love to go over it with you before we set any time for signatures. And then they're both alerted to it. So I think that might help offset that.
Okay,
as well.
so she's using a text protocol in terms of responding back and forth and making sure we get the parties included on that. So she's trying to take at least one step. How many of you are doing this in your initial interview? Now that we know technology is so embedded in the way that we present offers and doing listings and things like that, how many of you are discussing a protocol and what would constitute fraud? Some people think it's just convenient, but once you figure out that, look, if you sign for your husband just because you want to get it done fast, and he tells you on the phone, yeah, go do it for me, you just created fraud. And it's possible this whole thing could crash and burn as a result if we're able to prove that later on, if there's an issue. So is that possible that you might want to include that in your original dialogue? Technology changes stuff. That's all I'm saying. It just changes stuff. Yes?
I just want to warn you guys also that I had a client who, on the day that she was supposed to be signing papers at escrow, was in Paris. Because she assumed that everything would be digitally signed like it had been up to that point. I didn't even think about telling her that, no, you're not going to be able to stand in Paris and sign all the closing documents. So just a warning to tell people at the very end, you are going to have to be present.
I'd be glad to be a mobile notary who's flying to Paris to help her get the signature.
Let me give you a few more, and then we're almost ready for lunch. We're almost ready for lunch here. Let me give you a few more things. Creating and presenting a falsified sales agreement. Submitting a sales agreement with forged buyer signatures to the escrow. That's actually happened. I had that happen and created all sorts of major issues. And that's only because the other agent let me know she signed for the seller's wife because she didn't want to sell the property, but she thought it was the right thing to do. So she forged the seller's wife's signature without the wife's knowledge. No, she was a managing broker. I mean, I can go into big details, but she gave up her company shortly after that on my recommendation. Next, working under an informal purchase agreement. Informal, you know, the statute of frauds said all transactions in real estate need to be in writing, and informal would just be, yeah, we're going to just do shake hands. Listing property for sale without owner authorization. Is that possible? Yes. You bet. Especially if they don't tell you there's a spouse involved. There what?
Somebody died.
Yes.
And they don't have the proper form.
That's exactly right. Or what else?
Or the kids are trying to sell the property out of grandma and grandpa's hands.
That's right.
Or we always pull a listing kit to find out the names and see if they match.
This is something I've been hearing is happening more and more. Some of this happening with grandchildren and parents that aren't, or grandparents that aren't as.
I knew I should have been nicer to my kids.
Yeah, I should have been. Okay, stay with me about 5 more minutes. Let's give you some licensing and ethical issues. First of all, license expired and still continue to do property management that required an active license. Other ones were conducting real estate activities without an active license, interfering with the exclusive agency of another broker. And so this is interesting when we get into agency and how people can step into your agency. There's administrative notices, like registering your business name. That's not being done. Failure to include RBM in your advertising. Professional real estate activity isn't conducted under your RBM. Not notifying the agency of an address change and then not allowing the audit of your books is a problem. Trust account handling, invoicing services never performed or requested to do. Failing to open a client trust account. These are all from your association that have happened here in Oregon. Failing to disperse owner payments or properly communicate with the property owner. Opening escrow account 1 month after executing a contract and then failing to exercise due diligence. How about charging an illegal transfer fee in a property management transaction could be a problem. Shortage of funds in the property management security account. We look at not notifying the agency of a closed client trust account. These are all administrative. Then you get your criminal activity, encouraging sexual child abuse. You're going, what?
That's kitty porn.
Huh?
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's kitty porn.
Yep. Yeah, a friend of ours in St. Louis, Missouri, about a year ago, got arrested because he had on his phone a picture of his 2-year-old daughter taking a bath on his phone. And he happened to be on his phone and he was scrolling through the pictures and someone saw that on his phone and turned them in to, and had him arrested for child porn.
Dad, but
Yes.
not a real estate agency, it's okay for him to have his 2-year-old in the bath, but if you're a real estate agent, suddenly that's a
I don't know.
Wow.
No, it is nothing, but it just, fact is you've got people who are going to make assumptions quickly, right? So everyone has a bath picture of their kid. I would suggest you get them off your phone and off your laptops. All right, taking a look at another one. How about identity theft and embezzling $300,000 from a company? Identity theft and embezzling. We've seen criminal activity. I fired an agent that had embezzled over $20,000 from my company when I first came in. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. He was one of the first agents that I fired within the first 2 weeks because I noticed that he would list like 10 new construction properties. And then 30 to 40 days later, they would be a complete and full release. And when I went into taking a look at the records, I saw 30 days later they closed. One right after the other, like 10 in a row from the previous 6 months because he ran 2 subdivisions. And what he was doing was listing them, gaining the buyers, then he would cancel it, and then he'd keep all of the commission from the builder rather than pay the portion that was owed to the company. About $25,000. He paid it all back, and he was also released and relieved of his license.
When I first started there with the company I worked for, one of the agents kept opening their escrows in another county. And it appeared as if that was where the money was supposed to go to that particular one, so they were bypassing C-21 on the commission. It took them about 3 months to figure that out.
It's astounding what people think they can do. When we come back, we'll be on page 25. I'm going to do a short little thing on the Oregon Association of Realtors. But with that, how long is our lunch?